Our story begins in the city of Seoul, which is known for its unusual events. The last period of high school has just ended, and the students have the opportunity to return home. In every school, there are kids who are used to bullying their weaker classmates. A boy named Mark is going to go home and start doing his homework right away. Apparently, everything will not go according to his plan because the hooligans have made him their #1 target and are now trying to beat him up. Mark turned out to be a very self-confident guy and immediately began to use self-defense skills. With his very first punch, he managed to knock down his opponents and show that he should be respected. Although Mark looks like a regular nerd, he actually knows how to protect you. Unfortunately, it will be difficult to protect yourself from a baseball bat flying at your head from behind your back. No one is immune from such unpleasant situations because there were too many opponents. They came to mock him and even take the money he received from his parents. On this street, so Mark hardly expected anyone to stand up for him. A few seconds later, the hooligans saw a bright purple light. Everything seemed to change. At first, they ignored it and continued to bully their classmates. After that, a guy named Thomas appeared nearby who looked a little older than everyone else. He smiled and showed self-confidence in every possible way, although he looked like an ordinary homeless person. The hooligans advised him not to interfere in other people's business and to get away from there before they beat him up. Thomas was not used to being afraid of anyone. He showed his self-confidence in every possible way and was constantly smiling. This behavior can anger the dangerous guys from school. They are used to resolving any conflict by force. None of them expected that this homeless man would turn out to be a man with amazing abilities. Not only does he refuse to let himself be beaten, but it looks like he's trying to activate some kind of spell. He said strange words and snapped his fingers, and everyone around him instantly tensed up in anticipation of a miracle. After a few seconds, it became clear that nothing was happening. It seemed that this guy really was a homeless person who drank too much whiskey found in the trash. His magic doesn't work. Such tricks are never liked by hooligans. They are used to punishing cruelly for such pranks. What these guys don't realize is that even if Thomas can't activate magic, he can always use his power. One push from him is enough to knock a grown man off his feet and make everyone around him open their mouths in surprise. It was really beautiful and impressive. If anyone wants to test his skills, there is an opportunity to do so right now. Within a few seconds, the hooligans were brutally knocked out and had no more questions left. It was the first time Mark had seen someone use martial arts techniques so masterfully. It was truly beautiful. Only a true professional can destroy 4 opponents with one finger. Even though they were ordinary hooligans in any case, Thomas deserved words of gratitude because he saved a nice guy. Then a rather strange conversation began. Thomas began asking a lot of questions and trying to find out what year it was. He was very surprised when he heard that it was now September 10th, 2021. Apparently everything did not go according to his plan. He thought he had been absent from this world for more than 20 years, but in fact he had only missed 5 years. After that, he said goodbye to his new friend and said that he had no time for stupid talk. Thomas tried to activate the teleporter, but nothing happened, and it all looked extremely stupid. After that, he turned around and approached Mark again to ask him to borrow some money. It seems like the hooligans were absolutely right when they said that this guy was a homeless person. According to him, he can't use magic after returning from another world. Something happened to his mana management system, and now he needs money to get home. Within minutes, he demonstrated incredible investment-raising skills that would have easily gotten him a job at any hedge fund. In Earth time, more than 5 years had passed since he left the planet, although it seemed like an eternity. Now only 24 years old, Thomas hopes that his family will recognize him calmly. First, you need to get home via the metro, but even this simple task can be difficult. As he approached the metro station, Thomas noticed a huge concentration of soldiers surrounding the perimeter. He decided to approach the girls and ask what was going on and whether it was possible to get into the metro. It had been a long time since these girls had been so surprised. They started laughing and thought that this guy came from North Korea. At that moment, Thomas did not understand why they were laughing at banal questions, but soon the harsh reality would be revealed to him. He decided to wait for the bus and walk down the street. There were no soldiers at the next metro station, so he decided to go down. The doors were locked, there were no people around, but the keys to the station were nearby. After a few seconds, he went inside to understand what was happening and saw a notification that he had entered a dungeon. Now it became more clear why those same girls laughed at him. Perhaps they had already gotten used to this reality. Right now, this dungeon is being cleared, but Thomas felt that the monsters might be somewhere nearby. After a few seconds, he felt an unpleasant smell and breath on his back, and it was clearly not human breath. A huge, bloody wolf began to attack our hero with the aim of tearing him to pieces and feasting on the juicy meat. Thomas tried his best to stop this monster with magical power, but his attempts were in vain. If he doesn't stop messing around, he'll soon become that wolf's dinner. Already now, Thomas noticed that he had encountered such monsters in that very world called Alphen. He spent 20 long years in this world, and only now has he finally returned to his native land. Just because magical power can't be used doesn't mean the guy doesn't have access to physical abilities. You have already seen that he is a true martial arts professional, and now we will see it for ourselves once again. Within a few seconds, several more similar creatures appeared in place of the one killed monster. We'll have to have some fun and show these bloody wolves who's boss at this metro station. Even with physical skills, you can destroy monsters, although of course this is only the basic level of opponents. By defeating the monsters, Thomas was able to level up and see his basic stats. He is a necromancer, but unfortunately he is just a beginner now, who has a long way to go. Thanks to this work and the points he earned, he was able to improve his characteristics and raise his confidence a little. Now you need to continue to destroy monsters in order to buy skills and improve your capabilities. You need to find the return stone to get out of the dungeon and finally go to your home. In less than an hour, the level was significantly increased, although it took killing an entire army of blood wolves to do so. The skill to search for the return stone was activated to find a way to get out of here alive. It turned out that everything was not so simple. We will have to go down even deeper and repel the attack of a new wave of blood wolves. Here we cannot do without those very necromancer skills, about which too little has been said. It turns out that these skills allow a person to awaken the souls of the dead and force them to fight on their side. Thanks to this, Thomas can constantly increase his army and not be afraid of any monsters. Of course, skeletons are not very strong soldiers, but thanks to the numbers you can feel much more confident. The army is constantly growing thanks to new kills, so the longer the battle lasts, the larger the army of the undead becomes. Finally, the perimeter was completely cleared and Thomas was able to return to his home. One of the employees of the metro station briefly left his workstation. He went to a nearby cafe to have lunch, and upon returning saw that one of the civilians was inside the station. He was shocked and immediately started calling his partner to report the emergency. Within a few seconds, a portal opened, from which an ordinary person appeared. It feels like this guy is awakened, because only a person with extraordinary skills can leave the dungeon alive. There's always something interesting happening on the streets of Seoul, especially in a world that has undergone major changes. Today, one of the association workers had a good catch and earned a sufficient amount of mana stones. Apparently, this guy is unhappy that all the profits from the dungeons are taken by guild hunters. He would like to change this. Now he's heading to the black market to sell these crystals at the best possible price for himself. Apparently, someone found out that the mana crystals were stolen, and now it's time for a cruel punishment. Death with a scythe came for the little rat, and it is worth admitting that this death with a scythe looks incredible. Before us is the captain of the Kinotaver team, the Hwarang Guild, the hunter Lilu. She doesn't like to steal blood crystals from the dungeon. She never forgives such sins. This little rat who stole the crystals tried to resist, distract the huntress, and do everything to escape. He actually thought he could avoid his own death, which is incredibly naive. A hunter like Lilu will catch you even at the edge of the world, where you will be sure that you are hiding from death. The revenge was extremely cruel and merciless, all of which is Lilu's signature style. After that, she received a notification about an unauthorized portal at the nearest metro station. The girl headed to this place, not even suspecting that some guy had already managed to clear the area. He finally waited for his bus and headed home. Now Thomas has a lot to think about, because he returned to a world where dungeons are opening and monsters are appearing. There was nothing like this here before. Now this world has become similar to the world of Alphen. Something has clearly happened in the last 5 years. First, you need to see your parents and try to calm down, but there were problems with that. Thomas just found out that his house has disappeared, and there is another building in its place. It was too late to look for his new home today, and Thomas felt incredibly hungry. He immediately went to the nearest canteen to at least eat a little and take his mind off his problems. He has very little money left. Now it will be a problem to find a place to spend the night. Doing this in a dungeon is quite dangerous because there are many monsters that can attack you while you sleep. A few seconds later, the doors of the dining room opened, and a guy named Mark, whom we saw at the very beginning of the story, walked inside. He met the same homeless man who saved his life and protected him from hooligans. Mark was upset and even tried to run away, because this homeless man took most of his pocket money. Thomas wants to improve their relationship and become full-fledged friends, so he tries to find out where Mark lives. He even decided to pay him to spend the night at his house, although of course this money originally belonged to Mark. Anyway, they went home, and the next morning Thomas went straight to school. He met his former teacher, who was very surprised that Thomas was still alive. Everyone had long considered him dead, because when a young guy disappears for 5 long years, it is almost impossible to find hope in your heart. They decided to drink some coffee and talk about what had happened recently. Thomas came here with a clear purpose. He wants to look at the list of students and asks the teacher to help with this. Right now, Mark is also in this school. He studies in the same class with those same bullies who bullied him yesterday. These hooligans are always in the mood to offend someone. Today they are thirsty for revenge. If they choose a victim, they will not leave him alone until they achieve the desired result. Mark will have to be patient, because if he studies in the same class with these guys, then he will be forced to endure this bullying for a long time. He'll be very lucky to have a guy like Thomas, who always wants justice, standing up for him. It is immediately obvious that the hooligans remembered his face, because yesterday, because of him, they were forced to cope with a headache. Within a few minutes, most of the senior students had gathered in the school's backyard. They all came here to watch the local showdowns. School fights have always been a separate art form. Thomas had long noticed that both on planet Earth and in the world of Alphen, there are similar people with bad inclinations everywhere. These people are filled with arrogance due to strength and power, and such people need to be shown their true place. This hooligan reminded our hero of Cassis from the Alphen Union. Being a bloodthirsty necromancer who only summons the souls of sinners, he tried in every way to set Thomas up and create problems for him with the Union. The only way to deal with such people is to respond in kind tenfold. Overwhelming force is always ready to come to the rescue when it comes to dealing with arrogant people intoxicated with power. Yesterday, Thomas felt sorry for the bullies, but today he is not going to play childish games with them. As soon as the battle was over, Thomas noticed that a taxi stopped near the school and a familiar woman got out of it. Looking more closely, he clearly realized that it was his own mother standing in front of him. Just a few minutes later, the mother couldn't hold back her tears as she hugged her beloved son. All this time, she refused to believe that he was dead, and now she could finally breathe a sigh of relief. Thomas had to endure unpleasant minutes. He just learned that after his disappearance, there was a dungeon strike across the world. The subway stations instantly became underground. Unfortunately, Thomas's father died on the way to work, and his mother was forced to take care of Maria alone. Maria is Thomas's younger sister, and because of her needs, the family could no longer be considered well off. The financial situation quickly worsened. Every day became torture, and even now nothing has changed. Soon, Thomas finally found himself in his home. He immediately felt how difficult it was for his mother to take care of the family alone. It is difficult for a whole family to fit in this room. There is too little space, too cramped to feel free. The necromancer noticed a box near the wall. Looking inside, he realized that his mother had not been able to throw out the things of her beloved men. She refused to believe that she was left alone with her little daughter. It was too harsh a reality. A few hours later, the mother returned with little Maria. The girl was very surprised when she saw her brother. She was just a baby when he hugged her for the last time. It will be necessary to overcome a big gap and rebuild the relationship between brother and sister. Finally, the family was partially reunited. They had a modest dinner and went to bed a few hours later. When his mother and sister fell asleep, Thomas was still awake and thinking about everything he had learned recently. He was very tense and trying to figure out how to proceed and what he needed to do first. It had been 20 years since he was summoned to an unknown world by Alphen for no reason. This world was very similar to a virtual game. I had to fight as fiercely as possible to survive in these hellish conditions. The battle with cruel monsters tempered the character of our hero and made him a real hunter. After a long time, he finally became a max-level necromancer and took his place on the throne. He really wanted to finish this journey and did everything to return to Earth after meeting with the spatial administrator. Thomas constantly thought about being reunited with his family and always dreamed of only ordinary happiness. It is unpleasant for him to realize that the land to which he returned has changed and is now different from the world he left. His father is dead, and his mother and sister barely survive on their small salaries. It's hard to call this happiness. Now Thomas is obliged to earn money. If he survived in the world of monsters, then he can definitely survive here too. The next day, early in the morning, he went to the nearest park to try to make a plan for future actions. Now he even has a phone, and he thinks about what he has heard many times about some awakened people. That guy in the subway said that ordinary civilians don't go into the subway, only the awakened are allowed in. It seems that awakened people are called people with incredible abilities. Thomas is really special, which means this will help him earn money for his family. He wrote to his mother and said that for now he would prepare for the entrance exams and live with his friend. He wants to earn enough money to finally provide for his family, but for now, he doesn't want to put any extra strain on his mother. Mark left him his phone number, but it turned out that this number was completely unavailable. This guy deceived him because he didn't want to let a strange homeless person into his house once again. After school, Mark returned home and thought about how he never thanked his savior for beating up the bullies once again. Although Thomas looks like a psycho, he is clearly not a bad guy, at least in terms of human actions. A little later, Mark couldn't believe his eyes when he walked into his apartment and saw this madman. Somehow he got inside and claimed that he would have done it with a warning if Mark had left him the correct phone number. A little later, they all calmed down and started talking. Mark very quickly learned that his new friend was awakened. It's not really surprising, especially considering the situation where he knocked out 4 guys with one finger. Thomas wants to know everything about making money in the dungeons, because now he has the opportunity to officially get there. First, you need to register with the Hunters Association, then you need to join a guild and go on raids. Of course, it is more profitable to clear the dungeons alone, but this option is more dangerous. Thomas doesn't have time to take tests in the guild, so he needs to form at least his own minimal group. Mark took his friend's phone and said that he would now download the association's app for him. It turned out that this phone is very old and clearly lagging behind new technologies. It's unpleasant for Thomas to hear something like this because he bought this phone this morning and the seller guaranteed that it was the most advanced technology. A dungeon forum was also found where you can find information about raids and book a raid opportunity. First, you will need to measure your awakened rank to know which dungeons to enter. Even to enter a low-level dungeon, you have to pay. It looks like Thomas has to ask his friend for money again, otherwise his hands and feet will be tied. The next day, the Necromancer went to the Awakened Control Bureau to determine his strength. The Bureau staff were very surprised when they saw that something unusual was happening. They occasionally encounter talented hunters, but this guy is a real monster. Right before their eyes, he activated his skill and took out the soul of the dead rabbit. Now this skeleton will fight on his side and protect its owner from any danger. The local staff have seen many different classes and ranks, but the Necromancer is truly a rare specimen. Summoning abilities are assessed by the combat abilities of the creatures that the Necromancer summons to his aid. A green goblin appeared in front of our hero. Thomas immediately ordered the skeleton to destroy the enemy. A few minutes later, he received his stats. The result was shocking. Thomas turned out to be a hunter of the lowest level. It looks like the skeleton is incredibly weak, but the main thing is that he can now enter the dungeons. He immediately went to an online forum and started looking for a place for the raid. Hunters have already gathered here and are ready to offer a place in their team. For them, this is a common thing. Teams often form just before a raid, but Thomas is in no hurry to join other participants. He said that he wanted to do it alone, but that would require spending a lot of money to enter, and it would be very difficult to carry a lot of mana stones due to the time limit. That is why teams are formed. The reward is fairly distributed among all participants, and you don't need to spend a lot of money to enter the dungeon. Dorian is an experienced miner. His skills are not very high, but he is ready to share his experience and take Thomas into his team. The entry fee is calculated for the maximum number of participants, so to work alone you will have to pay a lot. It was because of this that Thomas decided to agree to the terms and start working in the team. The weakest level fire mage named Manny is very worried. It is immediately obvious that this guy has too little experience. He was recruited in the same way as Thomas. This guy left school 2 months ago after becoming awakened. When a person becomes awakened, he immediately dreams of starting to earn big money and no longer thinks about learning. The previous cleanup team encountered difficulties. They didn't expect to meet high-level goblins there. Sometimes in the dungeon there are monsters that shouldn't be there. An experienced hunter must be prepared for this. Soon it was time to go down and meet the monsters to show them that it was humans who ruled the earth. The newcomer immediately began to show his skills. His magical attacks are truly noteworthy. Even though he has the weakest level, Manny is already an important part of the team. After the fire attack, you just need to take out your sword and clear the perimeter a little from the remaining monsters. Thomas also did not stand aside and activated the skeleton, which was supposed to help the cleanup team. Soon they destroyed the first wave of monsters. All team members were surprised by the Necromancer's skills. They thought he was the weakest of the participants, but it turned out to be exactly the opposite. Now it's time to get the bloody mana stones. It's for them that the awakened risk their lives. 1 stone immediately covers the cost of entering the dungeon and allows the hunter to earn a little money. If you collect a lot of these crystals, you can get rich with just 1 raid. The dungeon clearing is not finished yet. We need to go down lower to meet more dangerous monsters. This is where the fun begins. You need to act as a single team and choose a clear strategy. During the battle, one must not deviate from the initial plan, otherwise chaos will break out and the hunters will be in danger. Thomas saw that the leader was making a mistake in his strategy, but decided not to interfere in this process. If he needs to save the entire team, he will be ready for it. But for now, it is better to watch. The hunters began to attack the large goblin with magic and physical attacks. Similar monsters were among the monsters that Thomas encountered on the distant planet Alphen. They have a fairly high intelligence and over time even learn to activate magic. Despite this, the real danger is not magic at all, because they have other hidden talents. The little goblins obey their boss and begin to attack the hunters with poisonous arrows. In the dark, it is difficult to notice the attack, but within a few seconds after the poison enters the blood, a person begins to feel incredible pain. It will be almost impossible to help him, and already now the team cannot count on one of its warriors. This is exactly what the Necromancer feared, because the main danger of goblins is their ability to lead due to their high intelligence. The goblin squad leader is not an ordinary monster, but a real boss who leads the entire army and makes them act like a good Swiss watch. Finally, the raid team leader sensed danger and ordered the hunters to retreat immediately. We should have realized earlier that the situation was getting worse, but now it may be too late. The goblins were prepared for such attacks. They defended themselves well and were like a squad of Spartans. The wounded guy can no longer be saved. He said goodbye to life long ago and now has no way to get out of here. You need to throw him to the goblins and retreat immediately before the boss reveals his hidden skills. This guy smells blood very quickly, and at such moments he becomes even more dangerous. The boss showed his predatory skills and attacked the zebra, which was trying to escape from him. The captain had no intention of helping the stragglers. Dorian was only thinking about his own survival. He ordered everyone to run away immediately and left one of the hunters to be eaten by the goblins. Thomas understood that this couldn't be done. He was the only one from the entire squad who remained to help his comrade. He hadn't hunted goblins alone for a long time, although it's hard to call him a lone hunter, since there's a squad of skeletons behind him. Even with the help of the undead, it will be difficult to defeat the goblin boss. But nothing is impossible. The skeletons will fight the goblins and distract their main attention, preventing them from grouping up and acting together. At this point, Thomas will have the opportunity to attack the boss and destroy him in a fair fight. For a hunter with Necromancer skills, this should not be a problem, despite the general level of training. Such a victory over the goblin leader can give him the opportunity to increase his stats and become much stronger. The result was truly impressive. Thomas immediately felt a boost of energy throughout his entire body. He saw that one of the team's hunters was still alive and asking for help. It was that same rookie Manny. Thomas agreed to help him, but in return he said that he had one important condition. Within a few seconds, they had untied the monsters' bodies and were taking out bloody mana crystals from them. It turned out that only Manny was doing all this. Thomas was just enjoying the peace all this time. Looking at him, it's hard to believe that he's a low-ranking hunter. It feels like this guy is clearly much stronger than he seems. In addition, we must not forget that he has the skill to detect blood mana stones. Such a technique is very important for a hunter's earnings. In addition, Thomas managed to pump out energy from the dead monster and transfer this power to the wounded hunter. All these skills surprised the young wizard very much. It was hard for him to believe that Thomas had been registered in the association just a few hours ago. You can make good money by selling mana stones. You just need to hint right away that Thomas is not going to share his earnings. He saved Manny from death, so the entire reward will go to him personally. The hunters tried to return to the top, but felt the presence of an unknown creature. Thomas turned to these rats and ordered them to show themselves immediately and stop hiding. It turned out that these were members of their team who had not yet returned to the outside world. They were surprised that 2 stragglers managed to clear out the entire wave of goblins. They are not even ashamed to show up here after they refused friendly help and threw the newcomer to be eaten by monsters. Of course, Dorian understands that it is necessary to improve communication in order to avoid conflicts. All this is needed only to get a percentage of the earnings, but it is unlikely that such a greedy guy as Thomas will share with them. He summoned these stones to the ground as if they were worth nothing at all. After this, his eyes became bloodshot, and he said that if anyone wanted to take his loot, that person would regret it very much. Of course, the hunters are not stupid enough to attack him because they understand that he killed the monsters that they could not cope with. They want to mend fences and take the dead guy's body. Thomas can keep the money for himself. It seems he was too strict with the team leader. He needs to relax a little and ease up on the pace. After 2 decades spent in a world of monsters, any person would become too aggressive and nervous. As soon as he relaxed and realized that people were much better than they seemed, he immediately received a blow in the back. This is what happens when you relax in a dungeon. All this time, the hunters were just waiting for the moment to attack. They behave ruthlessly and attack people with whom they fought together just a minute ago. Dorian is a rotten worm inside who is ready to go to extreme measures to make money. He pulled out a knife and dealt a critical blow. Blinding Thomas had no chance to defend himself. Throughout the city, you can find many guilds that are engaged in clearing dungeons. Lilu received information that an intruder had been found who had entered the dungeon without permission several days ago. His name is Thomas, and just today he was registered as an awakened hunter. Lilu will try to find him and figure out what happened, but she may not make it in time. And it's very lucky that this guy actually has skills that are much more dangerous than everyone else thinks. At the last moment, he managed to stop his enemy's attempt and showed him that he should not stab him in the back. Dorian thought he could do anything, but reality is full of disappointments, and now he has to come to terms with it. From the very beginning, Thomas thought that they were trying to betray him. Now it is worth admitting that his intuition did not fail him. The shameless traitors who are blinded by the mana stones must suffer the full punishment for their sins. If they think they can just kill people in the dungeon for money, then they are making a big mistake. Every action comes with a responsibility. Some actions bring success, and some make you suffer. Until the last second, Dorian hoped to get out of this unscathed, but Thomas was not going to give him that chance. He is not interested in any conversations, because he will always be as harsh as possible towards pathetic rats. It was a brutal revenge, and even Manny could not believe that ordinary people were killed before his eyes. He has no choice but to pretend that nothing happened. Otherwise, he will also be destroyed. Thomas is not the kindest person on the planet. He only has one goal: to feed his family. He just saved the young wizard's life twice. Now Manny is obliged to repay him. A few minutes later, Thomas helped his comrade heal his shoulder, and they calmly left the dungeon. They told the association worker that all the other team members had been destroyed by monsters. It all sounds strange. The hunters came out with a huge pile of mana stones, but the team was destroyed. Thomas said that sometimes strange things happen that are best left unexplained. He was asked to sign and informed that representatives of the association would contact him in the future to clarify the situation. Within a few hours, the mana stones were sold, and Thomas earned his first money for the raid. He's incredibly happy and already mentally enjoying the life of a rich guy. It's worth continuing to clear the dungeons yourself because there's no point in sharing easy prey with other hunters. The Necromancer never liked people who tried to stab him in the back. Manny must remember this for the rest of his life and be sure to pay this guy back for saving him twice. He will have to pay a lot of money, which can only be obtained in a very dangerous dungeon. Otherwise, Thomas will cut off his head. It's worth remembering the moment when Thomas complained about his new phone. The salesman assured him that the phone was the latest innovation in the world of technology, but this turned out to be completely wrong. Now this guy should also be punished, because it is not good to deceive customers. All this time he thought that he could easily sell low-quality products and still be in a winning position. Now the seller will remember this day for a long time and will never repeat past mistakes. There is a huge difference between an awakened person and an ordinary person, so the seller had no chance. His nightmare was soon over, but he would remember this guy named Thomas for a long time. To resolve the conflict, the seller was forced to give this hunter a new phone. Thomas didn't expect anything bad, and was calmly enjoying life until he got trapped. These people know that yesterday he cleared the dungeons alone, and today he killed his team members. He acts too fearless for a newbie, and Lilu doesn't like people who think they're smarter than the system. The Necromancer immediately felt the power in this woman. Her aura was truly incomparable. She doesn't like it when rats dig around in the dungeons that belong to her guild. Thomas smiled when he realized that they were calling him a rat, but it didn't take that many people to catch a rat. This means that his skills are respected, and also that he has crossed paths with a fairly large guild. He felt safe until one of the hunters attacked him without warning. It's clear that these guys are very serious, but they underestimated their enemy too much. At first glance, Tom appears to be a low-ranking hunter, especially if you look at the association's characteristics. Lilu is not going to play childish games with him. She came here to take revenge. So far, everything is working out for her, and the Necromancer can't even stop his enemies. He doesn't look like a normal rookie, but he's strong enough to stand in the way of serious opponents. If he wants to live a long life, he better never meet the Warang Guild again. It had been a long time since Thomas had lost a battle, especially in such a shameful way. A few hours later, he returned home to Mark and told him who he had to deal with. It is immediately obvious that Lilu is a famous hunter. She is one of the best warriors in the country. Her guild is in the top 3 along with 2 other South Korean behemoths. Now Thomas really wants to restore his powers in order to destroy this entire guild of scoundrels. Now he is still too weak, but in the future he will definitely regain his former strength. After earning his first money, he decided to give his friend a present and bought him expensive perfume. He also offered him good money in gratitude for Mark giving him a place to stay overnight. Never before had this ordinary schoolboy held such money in his hands. There are days that change lives very quickly. Mark was sure that his new friend would only spend the night here once, because he had already met his family. He was very surprised when he learned that Thomas would live in this house until he earned money for his own apartment. At this rate of work, this won't be difficult, because today Thomas has already bought himself the latest model of phone. This phone's case is made of mana stones, although the Necromancer didn't even know about it. He thought it was just a gift from the seller, who was trying in every way to make amends. Just a few seconds later, a notification arrived on the phone that Hunter Manny had transferred 40 million won to Thomas, although he should have paid 10 times less. I had to set up a meeting with this guy to understand why he paid so much. While clearing the dungeon, Manny was very scared. He understood that if he didn't pay, they would end up in the place of the hunters. He decided to make a substantial contribution just to stay alive and not anger Thomas. Apparently there was a misunderstanding. Manny misunderstood this guy and thought he had to pay almost $500 million. Modern children are too generous, but it would be stupid not to take advantage of this opportunity. If Manny is really willing to pay big money, then Thomas won't turn it down. The next day they met again after the Necromancer took a walk in the park. It looks like Manny will now be working as his personal driver and helping him in every possible way. Yesterday they had a long conversation and were able to come to a common decision. The young wizard will work in the Necromancer's team and give part of the profit to repay for saving his life. He can also act as a manager, book dungeons, sell stones, and even be a personal driver. Throughout the year he will have to perform all these tasks and be a true servant to his master. The most interesting thing in this story is that Manny is even happy to make such a sacrifice, and all because of a simple misunderstanding at the very beginning. Now the Necromancer will be happy to use the services of this guy, and in the future he will help him relatively. They are now heading to a 3-star dungeon, which contains the largest number of monsters in the entire area. There are really an incredible number of these ants, even more than expected. You'll have to raise all your stats in order to avoid screwing up at the most crucial moment. Even now, a Necromancer can control almost 24 skeletons, and the number of his warriors will grow as he progresses. These soldiers are ready to fulfill any of his requests and ensure that he does not interfere in dirty affairs. The undead destroy monsters, the wizard collects mana crystals, and the Necromancer does nothing at all. Usually, clearing such a dungeon takes several hours, but today the Necromancer managed to do it in just a few minutes. He does all this alone without the support of a team, all thanks to the skill of the Shadow Army. Thanks to the cleanup, he has unlocked many achievements, and the return stone has just been found. Within a few hours, Manny went to sell mana stones at the nearest artifact point. He couldn't believe his eyes when he learned the amount of money he personally earned for the raid. Of course, this required some hard work, but the result was worth all the effort. Over the past 2 months, he has earned over 30 million. Today, he has earned 40 million in one day. Now he looks at this whole situation in a completely different way. Before it seemed to him that he was in trouble, now he understands that this is an amazing opportunity. Not only did he find a very powerful friend, but he also got the opportunity to make a lot of money, although such a pace of cleansing may not please competitors. The Hammer Guild is one of the most powerful organizations in the entire country. Just now, the captain of the 4th support team named Chan learned that in the morning, 2 guys bought a ticket for 4 hours and entered the dungeon. The problem is rather that these guys survived and managed to clear the dungeon in too short a period of time. At first they did it in half an hour, and now they did the same thing 3 times faster. It has already become known that the hunters are only at the weakest level, but somehow they are clearing the dungeon. Chan immediately rushed to his computer to find out all the available information about these guys. Of course, when 2 newbies clear a 3-star dungeon in 10 minutes, it arouses great interest. Even if the association made a mistake when it assigned a rank to hunters, it was still too big a mistake. It looks like these guys have incredible potential and should be recruited into your team immediately. Information about our main character really quickly spread throughout the city. He becomes a local superstar, even though he only recently received the title of Hunter. He was just reported to Captain Lilu, who had already met this guy a few days ago. Even then it became clear that this guy was unusual, but no one could have imagined that he was so talented. He is currently at least mid-rank and either hid his abilities during the test or is growing at a crazy pace. There was already a case where a pathetic slug reached the highest rank. His potential was hidden until he reached the 1st place in South Korea. Lilu believes that you can't compare a legend and some homeless person from the street because it's disrespectful. The Hwarang Guildmaster, Hunter Lee-san, wants to personally verify that the person in question is truly talented, so he asked Lila to bring him here. Meanwhile, the main character of this story continued to do his main job and did not even suspect about the interest of the surrounding world. Manny is happy with his earnings, but he has to go through difficult trials that he never even imagined before. I had to ask the boss to rest a bit because the smell of dead monsters is tiring. Thomas has already received the necessary amount to buy a new house for his family, but he is not going to stop there. He is ready to give his assistant a generous gift for all his hard work. Now he wants to clear the dungeon on his own once again. Monsters constantly appear from an unknown portal, so the dungeon can be cleared several times in a row. Thanks to this, strong hunters have the opportunity to earn huge amounts of money, even at the risk of their own skin. By destroying monsters, the Necromancer quickly increased his level. Now he has finally reached the level where he can determine his class. He had just received the warrior class and was not very happy about it, as if it could be a big problem. It is much more profitable to be a wizard, since the Necromancer's skills intersect with magic. If Thomas had known something like this would happen, he would have used magic instead of swinging a sword. The system also gave him a bonus. The warrior's weapon will be a huge metal pipe. A steel staff is not something every hunter wants, but you have to start somewhere. Also received was a Necromancer bonus, an artifact called the Demon Seal Catalyst. The Demon Seal crystal is a magical crystal that necromancers receive upon reaching certain levels. A total of 7 crystals were created. Inside of them are great familiars that are incomparable to skeletons. With their help, on the planet Alphen, Thomas was able to destroy all his enemies who dared to come to his land with a sword in their hands. He had just opened the seal of such a crystal and began to wait for the appearance of his new familiar. He was very surprised when Bibi appeared in front of him and started yelling at her master. Apparently this girl missed him very much and all this time thought that he would never return. After he disappeared, all the familiars were placed in the seal space. After a few seconds, the demon smelled the smell that came from the bodies of dead monsters. She said the smell reminded her of Tranit's soldiers, although that seemed completely impossible. Tranit is a demon who came to Alphen from a mysterious dimension, after which he destroyed almost the entire population of the world. Thomas never fought him, but his soldiers constantly invaded Allendal and caused a lot of trouble. It seems that this demon has now reached the Earth and is causing problems for the local population. Perhaps it is in him that the reason for the appearance of the dungeons lies. All this time, it seemed that Thomas escaped from Hell, but Hell follows on his heels. By that time, Mr. Chan appeared near the dungeon, who had been looking for a necromancer for a long time to recruit him into his guild. He just found out that these newbies made a lot of money today. Thomas's progress is truly amazing, and there is a serious fight going on between the guilds for him. As soon as Mr. Chang saw those newcomers coming out of the dungeon, he decided to ask them a few questions. He said it wouldn't take long and would be beneficial for both sides. He was very surprised when Thomas refused, because he did not intend to waste his precious time on empty chatter. Mr. Chan immediately realized that he was dealing with a real psychopath and decided to get straight to the point. He confidently stated that the Hammer Guild wanted to recruit a talented hunter. It turned out that even such a statement was not enough to interest the guy who came from another world. I had to catch up with him and tell him again that the Hammer Guild is one of the top 3 strongest teams in the country. They provide the best support and offer the best conditions, but all this does not interest the Necromancer from Soul Station. Now he was in a great hurry to get to his family to finally give his mother what she deserved. For many years, she worked 2 jobs to provide for her young daughter, while at the same time they had to live in a small apartment. Now that horror is behind him, Thomas has collected enough money to buy his mother a new spacious house. He's awakened and can clear dungeons at breakneck speed, so money is no longer a problem. Of course it is a little dangerous, but the mother must understand that she needs to take risks in order to change her life. Once upon a time, a mother told her daughter that they would be able to get a dog when they lived in a big house. Now that time has come and they don't have to worry about anything. The family can relax a little and breathe deeply because now they are the owners of a huge mansion in an elite area of the city. While his mother and sister are enjoying life, Thomas understands that it is not time to relax yet. In the evening, he went to meet his familiar to talk a little more. It turned out that Bibi had taken on a new form and turned into a black cat. She can only assume her true form in dungeons, but the reason for this weakness is unknown. The energy of the demon Tranit has not yet affected this world, so the cat does not feel his aura on Earth. A man appeared from behind, calling himself the head of the Hwarang Guild. Apparently, he decided to personally pay a visit to this talented guy. At the same time, Manny was thinking a lot about the past day and trying to understand something. He still doesn't understand why his boss rejected the offer from the Hammer Guild, because from the outside it seems absurd. Thomas was clearly not in the mood to discuss the matter, but he did manage to say that he hated following anyone's orders. He refused simply to remain independent, and this act is the best description of his personality. Meanwhile, Manny dreams of a new car. He just needs to follow his boss and do the dirty work. He came to the car dealership to make a choice and finally experience the premium class life. He was just offered to sign a contract to buy a car, and Manny happily agreed. Meanwhile, the leaders of the large guild finally persuaded the Necromancer to talk to him face to face. To begin with, he decided to apologize for yesterday's incident, which involved Lady Lilu. This girl is really not the most well-mannered lady in the world. Now there are problems. It turns out that she is the guildmaster's younger sister, although he is much more polite. Now he is ready to compensate for any tricky situations just to get Thomas's attention. Lisan has been following Thomas's progress for a long time. He hasn't seen such stunning progress in a long time. There is no doubt that Thomas is one step away from the highest rank, and that is why the master wants this guy to join his guild. He is ready to provide the best conditions for development, but will he be able to hand over the role of master if Thomas defeats him in a personal confrontation? Everyone has already heard about the self-confidence of the Necromancer, but a true master is not the one who is stronger than everyone else. Lisan doesn't lead the guild because he's an awakened one and he doesn't have the highest rank. Apparently his beautiful and flattering words are not enough to interest the Necromancer. More than 5 years have passed since the appearance of the first dungeon, and people still have not figured out the cause of this cataclysm. There are more dungeons, monsters are also evolving and creating more and more problems. This doesn't scare humanity at all because people only think about making money on mana stones. The world will drown in chaos if things continue like this. Smart people must gather the strongest hunters and stop this madness. The master sees his purpose in such actions, and that is why he calls Thomas to join his team. There is an aggressive atmosphere in the Hammer Guild today, all because of Chan, who is clearly unhappy about something. After yesterday's refusal, he can't feel confident because he understands that he hasn't got a real diamond in the world of hunters. Now he doesn't even want to hear about this guy and calls him a common psychopath. That was until he found out that Thomas was already heading to the dungeon with 4 stars. If he clears it out with his comrade, it will be an absolutely unprecedented event. First of all, it should be stated right away that low-ranking hunters cannot enter a dungeon with 4 stars. If they went as miners or support, it would be logical, but they don't have the basic knowledge to clear this place on their own. All this means that they have some hidden abilities that no one knows about. Chan quickly changed his mood and said that today he would definitely attract this talented hunter to his team. To catch a big fish, you need the right bait. But Thomas is a real shark in the fish world. He's still pretty weak, but his progress is so fast that in just a few months this guy will be a real titan. Today they are driving in the new car that Manny bought and enjoying the comfort. All it took was accepting the risk and not being afraid to challenge your destiny. There are problems at the place where the dungeon is located, and the association employee does not intend to let newcomers in there. He understands that they will be torn apart like a piece of ham, so he does not want to take on such a sin. Unfortunately, the rules are written for absolutely all participants, and no one is going to make an exception. Looks like I'll have to go through the assessment again and hope my rank gets raised. It turned out that Mr. Chan was already near his dungeon. He was pretending to want to help. In fact, it was he who planned everything that happened, and it was because of him that our hero was not allowed into the dungeon. He came here to help and then do everything possible to get Thomas to join the Hammer Guild. Only C-rank hunters are allowed into the 4-star dungeon, but exceptions are made for the Hammer Guild. This station belongs to their guild, so all Hammer members can go inside. Chan calls it a gesture of goodwill and allows Thomas to go in there with his assistant. Before that, he even prepared a special gift for the Necromancer, just to improve their relationship. Of course, Mr. Chan means that you will have to pay for every gift. He didn't ask for anything in return, but that doesn't mean he won't get his own benefit. When food is shared with a person, that person will then be sure to thank his savior. Manny constantly watches as everyone around him tries to persuade Thomas to their side. He believes that all this will not lead to success because the Necromancer is smarter than any of them. A few minutes later, Mr. Chan arrived with his gift, but he was disappointed. The hunters did not wait for his return and managed to enter the dungeon. He was very angry because he tried to give them a survival kit as a gift. Low-ranked hunters without this set may die in a 4-star dungeon. For such dungeons, it is recommended to remove the command of a commander with a higher rank. One can only hope that the Necromancer's skills will be enough to survive in this hellish place. Starting from 4 stars, the dungeons are very different from the previous levels. You need to go there with information and a survival kit. Otherwise, even a high-ranking hunter will not return from there alive. Deep down, Mr. Chan knew that these guys were dead and could be forgotten. He thinks that they literally went to the grave. Apparently, he doesn't know the necromancer named Thomas very well. After the destruction of the monster, the first problems arose. The hunters could not find the return stone. At first, no one panicked, but after a long search, doubts began to arise in their heads. Without a return stone, it is difficult to find a way out of the dungeon. Soon a portal opened before the hunters, but there is no guarantee that it leads home. All this time, Thomas felt that everything was too easy. Now it became clear that only now the real game was beginning. The hunters decided to take a risk and entered the portal. A second later, they found themselves in another dimension. It turned out that only their bodies had moved, which is why each of them was left without clothes. This may seem strange, but let's pretend that everything is as it should be. Finally, this place started to look like a 4-star dungeon. The big game begins. Thanks to shopping in the system store, I was able to find basic clothing. Thanks to the transferred bonuses, the Necromancer's stats have increased, but this dungeon is still too dangerous. In the previous cleanup location, the Necromancer's skills were sufficient, so there were no problems. There may be much more dangerous enemies here, so you need to prepare for the worst. Very soon, the hunters felt the approaching danger. A huge crocodile that clearly wanted to have a tasty breakfast. This guy has a level 3 times higher than Hunter Thomas, but that doesn't mean he'll necessarily win. In addition to the base level, skills are also important. So, in dungeons, not everything is so clear. Mr. Chung sees that the barrier is still there, but the hunters are taking too long. There is growing doubt that they will not be able to get out of here alive. All that remains is to accept this as a fact. Portals to high-level dungeons do not allow material from the ground to pass through. Only items from other dimensions can be carried through the portal. Even if you defeat the monster, other problems may arise, such as lack of food and water. It's hard to survive empty-handed in the Amazon jungle, and it's almost impossible in the underground. Apparently, the guild representative doesn't even suspect how resourceful Thomas is. This guy survived in a completely different world filled with monsters. Going to the dungeon for him is nothing more than a walk in the fresh air. Crocodile meat has always been considered a delicacy, and today Manny saw this for himself. With each passing hour of the hunter's stay in the dungeon, Mr. Chan and his assistant believed less and less in their return. They know that there may be swamps in the dungeon from which it is almost impossible to escape. When such places appear in the jungle, it is a death sentence for close combat fighters. The legs stop moving, and at that moment the hunter begins to be attacked by hoka monkeys and anacondas. Even fireballs won't be enough to stop all these monsters wanting to taste the sweet meat. Although Mr. Chan had long since lost faith, he still continued to wait for the hunters. If they can really get out of this hell, they will really surprise him with their abilities. It turned out that Thomas even has a magical skill, and he has a warrior class. To use magic, you just need to call the skeleton wizards and all problems will be solved. After destroying the monkeys, the hunters escaped from the swamp and continued on their way. Here you have to be careful with the fruit. One wrong bite and a person will be paralyzed due to the poison. Manny still couldn't understand how Thomas knew everything about this place. This guy doesn't even realize that the Necromancer lived here for 2 decades. It was already evening in the outside world, and the representatives of the Hammer Guild were still waiting for talented hunters. Mr. Chan has a specific reason for being interested in the Necromancer. Over the past few years, since the world changed, this guy's eyes have never deceived him. Everyone knows the stories of how Mr. Chan recruited the most talented stars who are now legends. Now he is confident that Thomas will be better than even the most senior hunter of their guild. He just needs to be given time to develop. That is why Chan is waiting for this Necromancer in the dungeon and hopes for his return. To return from this world, you will have to defeat the Guardian of the Stone of Return, and he is a truly strong opponent. The hunters continued on their way and soon finally found the return stone. There were no goblins around, and Manny even hurried to take the stone back into his hands. It's immediately obvious that this naive guy underestimates the danger of the 4-star dungeon. One wrong move and the hunter's life will end. Only an experienced warrior knows this. This is not the first time Thomas has saved his friend's life, and he looks tense because he knows the worst is yet to come. In just a few seconds, orcs appeared before them, those same evil monsters that are known for their physical characteristics. Thomas wasn't surprised at all, because he had been expecting these guys from the very beginning. The population of Alphen consists of a huge number of races. There you can meet humans, elves, dwarves, beastmen, and even orcs. It was strange to see these guys in the dungeon. Thomas decided to ask them directly what they were doing here. The orcs were very surprised and could not understand who this guy was and how he knew their language. They said that they had lost their home because they had been defeated by the demon Tranit. After the balance was broken, the demon became the master of the world, and now the orcs are here because of a contract with this monster. According to the contract, the land should become their new home, so they came to take over everything here. Now it becomes clear why dungeons appear and what drives monsters. The orcs began to attack the hunters when they saw that a mad battle was brewing. Manny looked scared, but Thomas wasn't worried at all, and didn't doubt his skills. For many years in a row, he had been destroying orcs in droves, so he was ready for anything. In the real world, more than 6 hours have passed, but the representatives of the Hammer Guild are not losing their optimism. A whole day should have passed in the dungeon already. Could the hunters really be able to clear this place? At the last moment, the barrier finally disappeared. It seemed that the worst was behind us. Chan hopes that Hunter Thomas can get out of here alive and prove his incredible potential. Clearing a 4-star dungeon is a special achievement even for more experienced warriors. At first, no one emerged from the dungeon, so Mr. Chan resigned himself to defeat. That was until he heard movement and saw people approaching him. These guys not only managed to survive, they returned home with a lot of souvenirs. Apparently, the Necromancer managed to show all his skills and overcome the powerful resistance of the orcs. He didn't even need a survival kit. Now he can relax and look for a buyer for the crocodile skin. During the ride home, Thomas noticed a guy walking with a girl. Looking more closely, he recognized his comrade named Mark, who had helped him at the beginning of the journey. Thomas decided to drive closer to chat a little, although he did not want to distract the lovers from their date. It turned out that Mark was with a girl named Nuna, and she knew Thomas very well. Meanwhile, Mr. Chang returned to the guild and informed his boss that Thomas needed to be made vice president. He believes that the talented newcomer deserves it, and will definitely be able to take the guild to the next level. The vice president and one of the most dangerous hunters in the country, Diego, has just arrived at the guild. As soon as Chan saw Diego, he said that he would come here a little later. He acted strangely. Perhaps it was because Chan noticed the talented necromancer and now wants to make him the vice president of the guild. The boss isn't sure if this is the right choice. Lately, Chan has lost his touch and only brings mediocre people here. On the other hand, it was he who brought the best representatives to the Hammer Guild, so he can be trusted. After that, a conversation began about America and everything that had happened there recently. The rumors about a man emerging from the dungeon turned out to be true. It was a woman. She does not understand human languages and constantly pronounces a word that no one can understand. It feels like she has post-traumatic stress disorder. This girl may be the key to solving the mystery of the dungeon, so she needs to be talked to. Guildmaster Titan, also known as Mr. Kun, hopes to learn something that will help him get closer to solving the mystery. Few people know that this girl repeats Thomas's name, pronouncing it in her native language. The Necromancer is clearly connected to the dungeons that have appeared in the world, and soon answers to important questions will finally begin to appear. When Mark arrived home, he started doing his homework, but there was no room in his head for solving problems. He kept thinking about Thomas and didn't understand what was going on in that guy's mind. It turns out that Nuna is not Mark's girlfriend. She is just his older sister. Nuna had been friends with Thomas for a long time, so now they went to celebrate their long-awaited meeting. It is worth admitting that the girl has changed a lot and turned into a real beauty, whose appearance is difficult to resist. Once upon a time, she was the most popular girl in school. Half of the guys were secretly in love with her. Now she has become more modest, although she could use a little self-confidence. Thomas was also one of those guys who had a crush on Nuna. She was bright, beautiful, and knew how to get along with every student in the school. Now she seems to have changed a little and has even become embarrassed by compliments addressed to her. Thomas had long ago noticed that Nuna was wearing a hat and suggested that the girl take off her headdress. This guy is too straightforward. Even Manny was surprised by such a request. He soon realized that Thomas had never dated girls and did not know how to communicate with them as a gentleman should. Manny realized that the atmosphere needed to be changed and suggested playing an interesting game. This game involved drinking very interesting drinks that could cheer up even the saddest guy in the world. Everything didn't go quite according to plan, and out of the whole company, only Manny started having fun. Thomas, on the other hand, was incredibly angry, and said that if his friend didn't stop behaving like that, he would regret it. By that time, Nuna had drunk enough drinks to fall asleep and not pay any attention to all this. After a few seconds, her hat was finally removed due to Nuna turning over to the other side. Everyone around immediately noticed that there was a large burn visible on her body. It seemed that because of this, she was embarrassed to take off her hat when she was sober. Now it becomes clear why this bright and cheerful beauty became so quiet, calm, and withdrawn. Thomas put the hat on her head and said that she still remained insanely beautiful no matter what. The boys decided to go home and start new things the next morning. Nuna woke up and tried to figure out where she was and what happened to her yesterday. She was at her brother's house and learned that Thomas had brought her there yesterday. She soon remembered fragments of yesterday's events and realized that she had not been able to hide her burn from prying eyes. It was unpleasant for her to realize this, because the events that happened in the past hurt her heart too much. When the first dungeons first appeared, the monsters attacked the girl, and she received this terrible burn. She became more withdrawn and shy. She really didn't want Thomas to see her like this. After that, yesterday's memories continued to return to her head. She remembered how Thomas called her incredibly beautiful even despite the burn. She felt incredibly uncomfortable, although deep down she felt great. First, we need to go back in time and see how the relationship between these two characters began. Thomas and Nuna were in the same class, so they ran into each other every day. One school day, they had to stay after school together to clean the classroom. They quickly finished cleaning and prepared to return home. Nuna noticed that Thomas was too quiet, calm, and very much resembled her brother. This is the first time they've spoken since the beginning of the second semester, before which Thomas was too shy to even look in her direction. As they approached the exit from school, Nuna approached Thomas and said something important in his ear. The dream was wonderful, but unfortunately Thomas was awakened by a black cat. He hadn't been this angry after waking up for a long time. Apparently, he really wanted to see the continuation of the dream. All this time, our hero spent the night in a hotel. Thanks to the earnings in the dungeons, nothing is impossible for him. A few hours later, he saw his comrade, and together they began to look for the next cleanup point. They are interested in the 4-star dungeon, but the big guilds have already registered similar places. Thomas had an interesting idea and said he knew how to solve their problem. He just called the man who owes him a debt. A few minutes later, the hotel doors were opened for a new visitor. This man turned out to be Mr. Chan, who was ready to do anything to recruit a talented hunter. He said that using the dungeon for him is not the best option because all the lone hunters are gathered there. A strong guild has an exclusive program that will allow you to find a suitable dungeon. In between helping, Chan did not forget to talk about how the guild provides better conditions and apartments for its hunters, so it would be more profitable for Thomas to work in the Hammer Guild. He constantly tries to lure the Necromancer to his side, but so far he hasn't succeeded. Within a few minutes, Mr. Chan found a list of dungeons that could be cleared today. All that was left was to choose the right place and head there for full registration. Once the dungeon was registered, there was some time to prepare for the raid. Mr. Chan suggested going to a cozy place to drink some tea. He promised to give a short briefing that might be useful. This guy knows how to intrigue, especially when he says he has secret information. Right at that moment, a dungeon began to be reconfigured nearby, which happens extremely rarely. Many people gathered around, and Mr. Chang immediately started calling his guild. Even the military came, so Mr. Chan decided to tell a little more about the situation. First, you need to divide the dungeon status into 3 categories: Mine, Reconfiguration, and Rift. The dungeons that Thomas has already managed to clear are called mines. The mines last for several months, after which a reconfiguration occurs and a new dungeon is created. From this point on, many guilds begin to try to clear the dungeon first in order to get the most benefit. As soon as Thomas heard this information, he immediately became interested in the dungeon that was in front of them. This madman wants to take the dungeon into his own hands and get ahead of the experienced guilds. Chan immediately reported that this was impossible. The danger level increased several times, and a professional team was needed to clear such a place. In order for one person to enter there, you need to wait until the energy of the dungeon is measured. Thomas understands that he has raised his level and now he will definitely be given the opportunity to enter inside. His confidence was quickly shattered when he learned that his qualifications were not yet sufficient for such a dungeon rank. Right at that moment, the very same team led by the hunter Lilu appeared. It looks like the Huarang Guild will take this dungeon into their own hands and make a lot of money. Thomas immediately remembered this self-confident girl who almost broke all his ribs. He is not used to giving up, and has long been eager to show that since that moment he has become much stronger and more dangerous. He went out to meet Lilu and said that together with her he would finally be able to enter this hellish dungeon. He acted insanely self-confident, as if he was the best hunter in this area. Lilu laughed in his eyes and said that a slug like Thomas had no business being here. The Necromancer decided to act very cunningly and asked to give him the opportunity to at least take a little look at the dungeon. He even wanted to touch her armor to calm the girl down a little, but it was incredibly dangerous. When a woman like Lilu gets angry, the weather around her immediately changes and a storm begins. In just a second, a serious fight began, which could develop into a full-fledged war. It seems like this was all a plan that Thomas had thought out from the very beginning. He made Leela push him straight into the dungeon portal so that no questions would be asked of him. She tried to stop him, but it was too late. The cunning necromancer got what he wanted. Now he entered that very dungeon and found himself in an unknown desert, where he needed to find new clothes for himself again. You can't relax in places like this, because it's a real dune with sandworms. You have to be very careful not to end up in the mouth of a guy like a level 50 sandworm. This is a very aggressive greeting. You will have to activate your power and show the person who is the boss. Soon his allies came to his aid, which meant that Thomas was in serious trouble very quickly. He thought that he wouldn't even have to try hard in the dungeon, but it looks like he can't get by without special skills. Only thanks to his incredible strength and endurance was he able to escape the clutches of death. This allowed me to raise my level and activate a new form of the weapon. Now the iron pipe turned into a spear. Right now, ball-shaped worms are approaching our hero, and this is also very dangerous. You need to act ahead of the curve, because defending is always more dangerous than attacking when your opponent has a numerical advantage. The worms not only managed to defend themselves from the attack, but even began to spray poisonous gases. We'll have to use a wall of bones to somehow protect ourselves from this explosion. The 5th level dungeon is truly amazing, although Thomas hasn't even met the local boss. You will have to drink a magic potion to restore your health and return to normal. Now the poisoning status was removed, and the necromancer felt 100% better. Meanwhile, people were waiting for some news about the guy who ended up in this dungeon. Everyone around was sure that the monsters would blow him to pieces because he was an ordinary newbie. Manny had to defend his friend and say that he would definitely clean up this place, even alone. He is sure that Thomas will definitely return alive, even if he has to fight Satan himself there. Mr. Chan really wants to know about the necromancer's abilities, but this is classified information. In any case, if Thomas can really return from there, it will mean that Korea has an 11th awakened A rank. By that time, the number of monsters no longer surprised the necromancer from the Soul Station. He fought with different types of monsters and constantly increased his level. It must be admitted that he needed the help of the undead to do this, but in any case, this does not diminish his merits. The desert seems huge. No matter how far the hunter goes, the desert still does not end. Soon he finally saw something that looked like the remains of an ancient city and immediately headed there. Lucretia is that abandoned city. So far, not a single living soul has been found inside. There is no sense of any presence here, as if these were ordinary ruins from which nothing dangerous should be expected. At moments when a hunter loses his vigilance and relaxes, something unimaginable usually happens. If Thomas had developed less instincts, there would be a huge hole in his chest right now. It turned out that the hunter was attacked by Nagas, that is, snake-like mythical creatures that first appeared in Eastern mythology. They are clearly not happy that some unknown guy has invaded their sacred temple. It turned out that this place looked familiar to Thomas. He guessed that he was in the temple of Arya. Of course he knows the seer goddess, but he does not understand what the followers of this goddess are doing on Earth. It appears that the Nagas are collaborating with Tracknet to punish the cults. This is how they try to punish all the apostates of the blue-eyed priestess who left Alphen and fled to Earth. Thomas was very surprised when he heard that the blue-eyed priestess was on Earth. He cannot allow these creatures to reach the Earth because he is going to protect his home from enemy attack. In just a second, a total massacre will begin, and it will not be easy for a hunter from the ground. Thomas doesn't sense the presence of monsters at all, meaning they are incredibly good at stealth skills. It won't be easy for the skeletons. They need to call for help from absolutely all available warriors. As the hunter's level increases, he can increase the level of his soldiers. Thanks to this, warriors will become much more dangerous and durable. Now Thomas has a chance to get out of this dungeon alive. He promises that his rivals will regret challenging him and angering the necromancer. Within a few seconds, the battle began, and it immediately became clear that no one wanted to give in. Thomas understands that he can't rely on skeletons. He must first show skills. He needs to be very careful because danger awaits him at every corner of this city. To win, you will have to activate most of your skills and show your full potential. If he really gets out of here alive, he will show that he is Korea's greatest talent. Now there is a big difference in levels between him and the monsters, and the opponents are well trained to attack from close range. The Nagas know the territory very well and feel right at home, so the skeletons can't deal with them at all. Thomas has only one possible way out of this situation. He is ready to take extreme measures. The news reported that more than 10 hours had passed since the man accidentally fell into the dungeon. The barrier is still in place, and the victim of the incident was the awakened hunter Thomas. While his survival is still a miracle, the Hwarang guild boss is surprised that Mr. Chang was not mistaken. Although, of course, he is unhappy with his employees, who missed out on a tasty morsel since they were the ones who were supposed to clear the dungeons. Manny refuses to eat and shows in every way that he is very worried about his boss. It's very hard for him to understand that Thomas is in danger, but the hunger is still stronger. By that time, the army of skeletons had been mercilessly destroyed by the large snakes. Thomas looks tired, and it seems like his last second of life is approaching at an incredible speed. The 5th level dungeon turned out to be much more problematic than he'd expected. This guy even now manages to smile and show maximum self-confidence. It turned out that by this point, he had already managed to level up and discover hidden talents. Now he is ready to use the special demonic stone for sealing. Sealed within this stone was a huge familiar that now obeys its master. Now it will be much more interesting to watch this confrontation. The skeletons were too weak to support their boss, but the golem is on a whole other level. It's very noisy in this city today. It's very difficult to stay alive here in the evening. The battle did not last long. Within a few minutes, most of the Naga army was destroyed. Their boss found himself in a very difficult position and now has nothing to do against his rival. Before death, usually all monsters experience incredible aggression and try to make a final throw. They are greedily trying to grab hold of their lives, but Thomas will be ready for it. He has enough experience to remain cool and sense the strengths and weaknesses of his opponent. To win, you just need to activate the whirlwind skill and the monster will have no chance of winning. The general tried with all his might to stop the man, but his efforts were not enough. He never thought that there was anyone on Earth who was strong enough to make him activate a special skill. He wasn't going to die until all his skills and hidden techniques were used, but Thomas was ready for even that. The Necromancer is too experienced. He survived in a terrible place for 20 years, and now there are no situations for him from which it is impossible to get out. The people around the dungeon are still waiting for news and trying not to lose hope that the hunter will be able to get out of there alive. While eating dinner, Manny heard a familiar voice asking him if there was another helping of food. When he turned around, he saw that the same guy with the Necromancer skills was standing in front of him. All cameras immediately turned to the hunter who managed to pass through the trials of the 5th level dungeon. It seemed like an incredibly dangerous place, but Thomas looked like he wasn't even straining himself. After that, he looked at Lila and smiled slightly, as if showing her that he could clear such a dungeon even without the support of a team, unlike her. Journalists have chosen the perfect angles to take photographs that will be published in tomorrow's newspapers. The 11th A-rank awakening has appeared in South Korea, and this event will cause a national stir. In the Hammer Guild, the boss was about to go home when he heard the news on TV. He couldn't believe that there was actually a hunter who managed to clear a level 5 dungeon without the support of a team. All the journalists tried to interview him, but Chan defended his hunter. He already acts like this guy joined his guild and is now Hammer's property. The guild boss immediately recalled the conversation with his employee when he considered Mr. Chang to be a naive fool. At the time, it seemed to him that this guy's words shouldn't be taken seriously. Now it became clear that Chan was absolutely right, and Hunter Thomas turned out to be incredibly talented. Now this guy will fight for the top spot in the hunter hierarchy. If he joins the Hammer, the guild will definitely win the competition for the right to clear the most dangerous dungeons. This will give them the opportunity to make big money, but first they need to convince Thomas to join their team. Meanwhile, a serious meeting took place between the minister and the president of the Hwarang Guild. The old friends were having a quiet dinner and enjoying the pleasant atmosphere, but the news disturbed their anxiety. Leeson knew Thomas was an amazing hunter, but he didn't expect the guy to be so talented. Now the Hwarang Guild is obliged to hire him into their team and win the competition from other guilds. To do this, you will have to ask the minister for a small favor. The next morning, Mark tried to prepare for the exams that would begin in a month. It was difficult for him to do his homework and listen to the constant hysterics that came from the TV. He asked his friends to turn the sound down a bit because the movies were disturbing his preparation. All this time, there were 2 hunters in his house, and a black cat who pretended to be an ordinary pet. The hunters are not here for nothing. They have serious reasons for hiding in this house. Thomas is constantly followed by a huge armada of reporters, and he no longer knows where to hide from them. We have to send Mark to the store because if Thomas goes outside on his own, the reporter won't be allowed to leave until the evening. He still hasn't given a single full interview, and because of this, he can't even see his family. Reporters even come to his house, and his mother begins to worry about her son's activities. Then very strange events happened. Mom told Thomas something very important. He was angry and couldn't believe that monsters were appearing all around and Korea was still divided. Because of this, he received a summons to the army at the most inopportune moment for him. Thomas became incredibly angry and even began to think about killing the president of the neighboring state. This guy is really aware of a lot of problems and even interferes with hunters doing their jobs. Only if this guy is killed will Korea finally be united and people will live a full life. Manny had to stop his friend and explain that things were not as simple as they seemed. You need to think a little, and you will definitely find another way to avoid problems. After returning home, Mark said that this was not a situation to worry about. Awakened hunters are not sent to the army like regular soldiers, but are assigned to special forces. You can serve your country in another way by joining a guild and helping fight monsters that threaten national security. A few minutes later, the employees at the Hammer Guild began to celebrate something important. It was only now that Mr. Chan learned that Thomas wanted to meet and discuss cooperation. Most likely he will want to join the guild, and then Chan's plan will be perfectly executed. Now he can't even believe that he went to such a long way to recruit this talented guy. First, you need to talk to the guild president and discuss all the details. The master was very pleased that Mr. Chan had done a great job and managed to recruit the rising star. Of course, to get Thomas, you need to give him the opportunity to become the vice president of the guild. This makes sense because it will help the Hammer Guild rise to first place in Korea. A few hours later, an important meeting took place in the city's central cafe. At this meeting were representatives of the Hammer Guild, as well as a rising superstar of the hunting world. It turned out that Thomas is not going to join other guilds. On the contrary, he wants to create his own personal team. He is ready to offer a serious benefit of 1 million in order to interest his interlocutors. This amount will be paid on top of his annual salary, so Thomas is confident that they will be able to reach a deal. Apparently, the Necromancer is absolutely confident that his guild will become much larger than even the most developed teams in the country. After the meeting ended, the representatives of the Hammer Guild went home and talked a lot about Thomas's proposal. This guy knows how to get people interested, because everyone understands that he is a future top-ranking hunter. No one has ever soloed a level 5 dungeon before, so it definitely has high potential. There is no longer any doubt that if Thomas opens his own guild, he will very soon rise to Olympus. In the Hammer Guild, everything is the opposite. Career advancement here is very questionable. Even if a hunter has high achievements, it will still be difficult for him to surpass the founding members and become vice president. Now Mr. Chan and his assistant are ready to join Thomas. He remembers all those moments when his talents were mocked and he doesn't want to hear it again. It's time to finally get full power and enjoy life instead of doing dirty work. A little later, the representatives of the Hammer Guild returned to the main office and saw that there was no one there. When they entered the room, the light suddenly turned on and the familiar voices of the staff were heard. It looks like a surprise. The guild boss congratulates Mr. Chan and says that from tomorrow he will become the vice president of the support team. Everyone around him congratulates him on his promotion and wishes him success in his future position. Apparently, the entire staff is convinced that the genius Chan has just completed incredible negotiations with a potential superstar. It's an awkward situation. Everyone around thinks that Thomas will join their team, but everything is quite the opposite. Chan immediately wanted to tell the guild president that there was a misunderstanding, but he didn't even want to listen to him. The president said they would work out all the details after the gala dinner began. Now we need to somehow explain to the president that this entire celebration was organized in vain. It won't be easy because the president is incredibly pleased that Thomas will join their guild and help them reach a clear first place. I had to overcome myself and honestly state that the negotiations were broken off and the contract with Thomas was not signed. At first, the president was sure that all this was some kind of joke and nothing more than a prank. It took him a few seconds to finally realize that there was no humor in it and that his employee was telling the absolute truth. The president started yelling at Mr. Chan and blaming him for the large amount of money spent on the celebration. A lot of resources were also spent on converting Hunter Thomas to their side. To do this, it was necessary to buy out the dungeon and let it clear out these dangerous places. It was necessary to pay people to adjust his rank and even buy a set of equipment that Thomas never used. Mr. Chan said he was taking responsibility and resigning because he no longer intended to work under such conditions. After that, he calmly turned around and left, not even paying attention to the fact that the president wanted to continue this conversation. Now Mr. Chana is preparing for a new challenge. He accepts Thomas's offer and opens a guild with him to become the vice president. Assistant Paul had been waiting for him for a long time in the running car, the two of them ready to start a new life. After some time, they met with Thomas and Manny. The Necromancer immediately told them that he was going to name his guild Adral. Now Mr. Chang must get to work and take care of the guild registration and all the paperwork. Before starting work, Thomas wanted to have some tasty drinks, but Mr. Chan changed the subject of the conversation. Apparently, he is interested in the 6th level dungeon, which is located at Seoul Station. In order to register a guild, you will have to find other hunters who can clear the dungeons when Thomas is resting. Taking Mark is not the best option because this guy is still in school and cannot be registered in the guild. Thomas took out his phone and realized that he didn't even have any friends in his contacts since he wasn't going to include his mother in the team. A few hours later, he had an idea and made one important phone call. He called a very interesting guy to arrange a meeting and make him a member of the new guild. This guy turned out to be the same telephone scammer with whom Thomas had previously had a conflict. This guy's name is Brian. 2 days later, the guild was officially registered and preparations for the start of work began. All the team members were excited about what lay ahead of them. They really had a long journey ahead of them. Everyone worked hard to make the guild office look like a place for serious company. Brian was sure that he was being played and that it was all a joke, but today he already understands that he got into serious trouble. The man who beat him half to death and stole his phone is now his personal boss. Thomas has become a famous hunter, although he has not yet even achieved the highest rank. The Necromancer is constantly shown on TV. Everyone understands that his official rating increase is only a matter of time. He is already one of the strongest warriors in the country. It is no wonder that reporters are going crazy about him. Brian realizes that his business has not been going well, and now he has an opportunity to make big money. At first he didn't want to come here, but he had to. Otherwise, he would have been beaten very badly. Now he is part of the guild and has the opportunity to change his life. All this happened in just a few days. Soon the boss appeared in the office and thanked the employees for their help. They returned after clearing the dungeon. Apparently this work was very difficult, considering Manny's condition. This guy looks like he's been through hell, even though the raid was a success. Now it's time to head to the meeting room and discuss future plans a little. Mr. Chan can choose the position his boss assigns him to. Thomas gives him that opportunity. Everyone around was shocked when they heard that each of them could choose a position for themselves. In other companies, such an approach is unthinkable. Typically, employees are divided into two categories, awakened and unawakened. An awakened person can be a manager, director, and vice president. These are the positions that provide the highest income. Manny said he was ready to take any position. A second later, he heard that he would be a director. Bright thoughts immediately arose in this guy's head about how he was making huge amounts of money. It was only a little later that he realized that he was the director of resource collection. The hunter was immediately upset because he realized that there was nothing special about this position. It is also necessary to create an accounting department, a sales management department, and management support. Mr. Chan will take on the role of general manager as he has sufficient experience in this industry. Paul will be in charge of the support department. He already had similar experience in the Hammer Guild. Then an interesting episode took place. It turned out that Brian was invited here only to register the guild, since 5 members were needed for this. Thomas didn't expect this guy to stay with them. He thought Brian had already returned home a long time ago. If he still decided to stay in the Adril Guild, then he also needed to be given some important work. Mr. Chan is sure that they need to hire new employees because when the guild grows, the amount of work increases. Thomas is sure that this is not at all necessary because he can defend the dungeons on his own. This guy founded a guild just to get a deferment from the army. Otherwise, he would have easily joined the Hammer Guild. If this had really happened, Mr. Chan would have lived a completely different life, and now these thoughts haunt him. If additional employees are needed, Mr. Chan has the opportunity to hire anyone he deems necessary. Now the main tasks are distributed among all participants, and everyone knows what needs to be done. Soon the news reported that Thomas was already a top-ranking hunter, although this has not yet been officially confirmed. Nuna saw the news about her friend and couldn't believe that just a few days ago she was drinking with him. It was a wonderful evening that she still can't get out of her head. She especially liked the moment when he put a hat on her and said that she was beautiful even with a burn on her head. It's hard not to think about it throughout the day, because this girl always liked Thomas. Not everyone treats her so well. There are many people who force her to wear hats all the time. Her burn often irritates people, and therefore she has developed an inferiority complex. Nuna has been thinking for a long time about saving up enough money and finally moving out of this dorm. At such moments, her self-esteem drops to 0, and she thinks that she has nothing to hope for in this life. Soon, she received a letter from her brother Mark, who had just recently finally written his final school exam. Thomas also moved out of his house, and now this guy wants to spend some time with his sister. He waited for her near the hostel and heard a conversation between 2 girls who appeared near the main entrance. They discussed Nuna and said that before she got burned, this girl behaved with men like an experienced priestess of love. They said many more unpleasant things, and Mark immediately felt uncomfortable from what he heard. Meanwhile, the clearing of the dungeon never stopped. The work continued every day. Manny and Thomas were constantly focused on their direct responsibilities and trying to maximize profits. Now the moment has come when useful artifacts appear less and less often, and this is a bad signal. The number of raids has increased, which means we need to work harder and be more focused. If things continue in the same spirit, the new Adril Guild will soon make a loud statement about itself. Soon the raid finally ended, and the people gathered near the station could not believe that everything happened so quickly. Even Brian came here, although this is not at all part of his key responsibilities. He is here to take Thomas with him. The guild has already been practically approved by all authorities. It remains to catch the issue in the Bureau of Public Affairs. Reporters have no respect for anyone around them and rush straight to the main star to ask a few stupid questions. Everyone wants to understand what secret Thomas has acquired and what exactly allows him to clear dungeons so quickly. He's not taking reservations for Seoul Station's Exit 6 yet, but he'll have to open it up to more people soon. Brian couldn't take it anymore and ordered everyone to immediately move away from his boss because he was tired after a hard raid. Interviews can only be taken after an official request to the guild. If the reporter does not leave Thomas alone, they will be summoned to court for further proceedings. He carefully studied the faces of each journalist and said that he would not forgive anyone for violating the rules of subordination. This guy finally showed that he can be really useful in the guild. After that, he calmed down and promised to quickly bring a car for his boss. Previously, his life was not going the way he would have liked, but now he finally has the opportunity to escape from the gray everyday life. Soon Thomas returned to the guild office and began to study the news that was published on the network. Now everyone is asking one question and trying to find out who is the strongest hunter in Korea, Thomas or Christopher. This guy looks pretty strong, and the Necromancer begins to worry about their upcoming meeting. To do this, you even have to eat power-up stones to increase strength, agility, and endurance. Soon the office doors opened, and a young guy named Mark walked inside. He looked quite worried and said that he really wanted to talk to Thomas alone. After a while, Mark left the office, and Manny returned to discuss everything that had happened. He noticed that Mark looked worried and tried to find out what had upset him so much. It's probably a long story about a brother's love for his sister. After a difficult conversation, Thomas even decided to go somewhere. Manny began to suspect that his boss might be on a date with Nuna and began asking a lot of questions. Brian, who has been the director of flower watering all this time, became interested in this conversation. He realized that he had a chance to be useful to his boss and get a promotion. He entered the master's office and said that he was a professional in love affairs, so he knew what to do. First, they went to the mall to pick out the right clothes for the leader. Brian tried in every way to be active and useful, because he understood that he could not miss the chance to change his destiny. Thomas didn't like it at all, to be honest. He didn't understand why all this was necessary. Half an hour ago, there was a conversation between him and Brian that made them go to the mall. Brian said he knows how to win the heart of any girl. First, you need to update your wardrobe. It never hurts to buy something stylish, especially when you are a popular hunter. After some time, the sellers finally managed to find a suitable suit for Thomas. He looked incredible. All that remains is to choose the right watch, and then the look will be completely finished. Brian even managed to make a list of entertainment so that the boss would know what to do with Nuna. Thomas thanked the assistants for their help and said that they could go home early today. Manny is ready to go home, but Brian has one more important thing to do. He considers himself a professional in love affairs and wants to do everything possible to help his boss. He is sure that Thomas has fallen in love and therefore something very important needs to be prepared. This guy disappeared like lightning and it feels like he's clearly rushing things. Meanwhile, Nuna had no idea that she would soon have an important meeting. A little later, she picked up her phone and saw a message from Thomas. He said that they needed to see each other today. A lot of thoughts immediately came into her head. She even thought that he wanted to ask her out on a date. A few seconds later, the phone rang, and she learned that Thomas was already near her house. She looked out the window and saw that he looked amazing, as if all her dreams were really coming true. She quickly got dressed and went outside. Thomas asked her to go with him to the shopping center. He said that all this was necessary in order to give her something and then go on a date. It all seemed like some kind of fairy tale, which was so hard to believe. There was a feeling that it was just a sweet dream. It's too early to have dinner at a restaurant, so they decided to go to the cinema. Nuna adjusted her cap from time to time. Over the years, she had developed a habit of taking care of her headgear. Thomas constantly drew attention to this. He really wants her to get rid of all her complexes. Nuna acts like this because she believes that people are uncomfortable seeing her face after the incident in the dungeon. Thomas is determined. He is absolutely convinced that he needs to make this girl change. First, he approached a very interesting counter and said that they needed to buy something. After that, they went to the cinema, which was located in the shopping center. People paid attention to this couple in love because they looked very extravagant. It feels like there are celebrities here right now trying to hide their faces. The Necromancer decided to put on a mask to attract everyone's attention. Because of this, everyone was looking at him and not at Noon, and because of this, the girl felt more comfortable. There wasn't a single extra visitor in the cinema, but behind all this, there was no Necromancer from Seoul Station. Half an hour ago, he was choosing tickets and saw that there was not a single free seat left. He said that they didn't have to watch any movie. At that moment, a strange guy in a mask and a cap approached him. He handed him 2 tickets to the next movie show and immediately ran away, although Thomas tried to stop him. The hunter noticed that this guy reminded him of someone, but he didn't dwell on these thoughts. After this, the crazy guy approached the ticket seller and demanded that he return his money for the unrealized opportunities. It became clear that it was Brian who did everything to ensure that Nuna and Thomas were left alone in the hall. They haven't been to the cinema for many years, so they will remember today for a long time. Wearing masks is much more comfortable, and Nuna can now feel more confident. It's time to relax and play a little, because they are in the most saturated area of the city. After his first try, Thomas managed to win a small prize for his princess. He had never won anything before, but today, on his very first try, he caught luck by the tail. Taking a closer look at the seller, he realized that in front of him was again a familiar face, who was helping him in every possible way. Brian was willing to do whatever it took to make his boss's date a success. He was always around and tried to remain unnoticed. Nuna really didn't even pay attention to him. The day was very busy and pleasant, and towards evening it was time for dinner and a walk. The school friends talked a lot and tried to catch up on all the lost time over the years. Deep down, Nuna hasn't been this happy in a long time, and for the first time in a long time, she doesn't have to worry about the looks of others. Of course, all this is just the effect of the mask, but the result is above all, and all this is thanks to Thomas. She would like this dream to last forever. She really enjoys wearing a mask, watching movies, and not paying attention to those around her. People around them probably think this couple is weird, but they don't care at all. Nuna must gather her courage and overcome herself in order to finally live a full life. She will have to go to places where there are a lot of people in order to finally overcome her fear. She's still not ready for this right now, and she wants this evening to last forever. If it weren't for Thomas's support, she wouldn't have been able to take off her mask and open up, but now she's willing to take the risk. Right at that moment, loud explosions were heard above their heads. It was a wonderful fireworks display. Various people gathered around and noticed the girl's face. At first they were a little scared, but then they thought that if Thomas was walking with her, then he really loved her. This was all planned by Brian. He asked these people to clap and liven up the atmosphere, but everything didn't go according to plan. Thomas realized that his assistant was behind all these pranks and immediately became incredibly angry. He saw that the extra attention had upset Noon and realized that he needed to take very decisive steps. He managed to instantly activate the bone wall skill to shield himself and his girlfriend from society. A second later, they were in complete darkness, and Thomas asked Noon to close his eyes. He said that he had a special gift for her, and he had been waiting all this time for the opportunity to give it to her. This morning, he had a serious conversation with his friend who recently graduated from school. Mark reported what happened during the first dungeon breakthrough. Thomas learned that Nuna and Mark lost their parents that day. The girl suffered at the hands of monsters, and after that stopped living a full life. She no longer smiles and is not the same cheerful Nuna she used to be. Mark felt ashamed to ask for such a thing, but he asked for help because this issue concerned his sister. Thomas said that he would now rid Nuna of this nightmare that had haunted her for many years since the first breakthrough of the dungeon. It looks like this guy decided to use the healing ointment to completely heal the beauty's burns. After that, their date came to an end and Nuna returned to the Jason Electric Company dorm. The girl received a message from Thomas where he asked her not to wash her face or hair so that the ointment would not wash off until the morning. She is already dreaming about changing her life if the ointment can really help her. After that, she decided to look at what they had won during their walk at the mall. Nuna was very surprised when she saw that the gift was a ring. Usually in such places you can win a soft toy at most. Only now is it becoming clear that this was a special day, although this was not previously emphasized. They watched a movie in an empty theater and then went to an expensive restaurant for dinner. When they went outside, they were greeted by a huge fireworks display that was hard to compare to anything else. After that, people gathered around them and began to congratulate them and give them flowers. It seems that Thomas really wanted to propose to her, but at the last moment, everything went wrong. The next morning, the new Admiral Guild was cheerful because the boss came to have a serious talk with his assistant. He made Brian do endless push-ups so that the guy would understand that he shouldn't interfere in other people's relationships. Brian must know when to stop, otherwise he can ruin everything with his actions, even when he wants to help. He should only do what he is asked to do. Unnecessary actions are not needed here at all. A little later, Mr. Chan came into the room and said that the boss no longer had to serve in the army, but he would have to do something to make it happen. You need to complete 10 mobilization tasks from the army, then Thomas will be completely free. To do this, we will have to mobilize urgently because the task must be completed right now. There was a major underground breach. People have already been partially evacuated because the breach could pose a threat to the entire area and even the city. After the reset, the dungeon must be cleared within 1 month, otherwise the barrier will break and the monsters will break out. The soldiers couldn't do it on their own, so they asked for help from the awakened hunters. If even Thomas fails to fix the situation, the neighboring city of Daegu will be completely destroyed. Very soon Thomas went on a mission and saw that he was not alone in the area. He was immediately introduced to the first lieutenant of the Special Protection Squad, a girl named Jennifer. She had already heard a lot about this hunter and hoped that he could help with this problem. The dungeon rupture won't take place until tomorrow, so we need to try to clear this place out while there's still time. The return portal has already been used 3 times. If you enter the dungeon, you can only return from there if it is completely cleared. With the help of return items, you can return even during the raid, but no more than 3 times. The first time a special team from the Hwarang Guild entered this dungeon, they instantly failed. Then this same team united with the Hammer Guild, but the result did not change at all. The third time, international forces joined them, and even that was not enough to solve the problem. Nowadays, few people believe that some lonely guy, even with incredible talent, will be able to cope with this task. In any case, we can only hope that Thomas will succeed, but for this he will have to risk his life. Jennifer is confident that they will succeed, although of course it will be difficult, because the portal does not allow modern weapons of humanity inside. In any case, if this dungeon is not cleared, the monsters will break out, and then the soldiers will easily destroy them. Then the question arises, why was it necessary to call Thomas at all if clearing the dungeon was not necessary? Apparently, awakened warriors are also important to provide full support to the soldiers. If the monsters can break through the first line of defense, the hunters will come to the forefront. The other awakened ones have already arrived and are in the restroom preparing for battle. Very interesting, mysterious, and talented hunters from different corners of the earth have gathered here. They immediately recognize the Necromancer from the Soul Station, because only the deaf and the blind don't know about this guy now. It looks like Thomas will finally have to work together with Lilu, a collaboration that has been brewing for a long time. Before coming here, Lilu received a special assignment from her boss, who told her something important. The girl was puzzled, but promised to do what she was asked to do. Now she is extremely determined, and one can only guess what exactly the master of the Hwarang Guild has ordered. They exchanged jokes about each other as if they had met as old friends. Their relationship will be interesting to watch. Lilu reminded that she had already defeated Thomas in the past, although of course he was still too weak then. Everyone around began to discuss this incident and even doubt that Thomas was really as strong as they said. The lieutenant had to calm these guys down because they were about to start a battle right then and there. Tomorrow they will have to fight together in the dungeon gap, so it is better not to get nervous and save their strength for confronting the monsters. After this, Thomas turned to Jennifer and asked him to get information about the dungeon. There's going to be a rupture tomorrow, but for some reason this guy is trying to find out what's inside this portal. The information is publicly available, but usually no one asks such questions. Lilu immediately noticed this. Soon Thomas was in front of the portal to the 6th level dungeon. The energy released was incredible. This is the strongest dungeon he has ever been in, but he is not alone here, because Lilu has been watching him this whole time. It is now clear that Thomas had decided from the very beginning to go inside on his own and not take anyone with him. Lilu had been following him from the very beginning, ever since he asked for more information about the dungeons. The girl thinks he's crazy because it's stupid to enter a dungeon where 3 professional teams have already failed. Thomas does this in order to collect the maximum amount of experience points on his own and not share the artifacts he has earned with anyone. He calls Lila a timid cat and says that he will understand if she is afraid to go into the dungeon with him. Meanwhile, the leader of the Hwarang Guild was in his office playing golf. He received an urgent call, as well as important information that he could not have foreseen. For some reason, his younger sister went to the 6th level dungeon, although he gave her a completely different task. Meanwhile, 2 hunters actually entered the portal and saw traces of a large-scale battle. Thomas immediately called his army of skeletons to help him feel safe. Now it becomes clear why this guy is clearing the dungeon alone, because he has his own army. A few seconds later, their appearance attracted a huge org, which would have to be destroyed. Thomas has been waiting for a long time for the moment when he can fully realize his potential. Clearing the area will serve as an excellent springboard for him to level up. You just need to act in your usual manner and not leave anyone any extra chances. Impeccable technique and maximum strength will easily allow you to destroy even the main boss of this dungeon. Thomas landed a critical hit and managed to rise to level 40, but this is just the beginning. Also, don't forget that he works not only with the help of skeletons, but also with the help of other familiars. After that, he took a few steps forward and was very surprised, as if he saw something familiar. The legends speak of the appearance of the sacred place Alphen. The Necromancer has already encountered these stories more than once. He had already heard something similar during his stay in another world, where this place was called the Temple of Giants. It was probably because of this cliff that other hunters were unable to complete their task and clear the dungeon. Thomas has unlocked new skills and will now be able to use a technique called soul extraction. Thanks to this, he was able to increase the number of his subordinates, and now he commands an army of hundreds of warriors. Various skills were unlocked. The warrior's weapon took on a new form and turned into a greatsword. After learning the greatsword technique, the skill of bifurcation was obtained, which will be useful in future battles. Finally, the moment has come when you can remove the seal of the sealed demonic stone and call another familiar for help. Thus, a ghostly horse named Shin appeared. He is ready to attack enemies even at the cost of his own life, because hot blood flows in his veins. Bibi missed this guy very much, just like Rocky did, because once they were all one big team. We need to leave all these sentimental things for later. It's better to hurry while there's still time to clean up. Meanwhile, Lilu did not go with Thomas, but destroyed the monsters in the forest on her own. Her shadow breakthrough skill is truly amazing. It is not for nothing that this girl is called one of the most ferocious killers of the generation. As soon as she picks up a sword, a mountain of monster corpses immediately forms around her. After walking a little further into the forest, she saw her partner riding on some kind of strange, ghostly horse. This guy must have a lot of tricks up his sleeve. His skills never cease to amaze. The reason they hadn't managed to clear the dungeon up to this point was quite simple. They hadn't managed to cross the cliff. Only hunters with flying skills, or those who can jump very high, were able to cross the cliff. Behind the cliff, the Stone of Return is guarded by 3 monsters. Seeing this, the hunters immediately surrendered. Letting the dungeon explode was more reasonable than clearing it out on our own. Even if the city is destroyed, people will still be able to rebuild it. At least that is the decision of the guild president, who is closely connected with the political elites. Lilu tries not to ask herself unnecessary questions and act according to her brother's plan. That was until now, because now she finds it hard to believe that her guild can't clear the dungeon. But some pathetic loner can do it. Now, an internal struggle has awakened in her soul. For the sake of her guild's reputation, she is ready to take a risk and stop Thomas. With only 1 hour left before the dungeon bursts, the Hwarang Guild president has to answer a huge number of questions. There is no certainty that the hunters will be able to get out of the dungeon alive. It is already obvious that their chances are close to 0. Everyone wants to understand how Lee-san is feeling because his sister is inside the 6th level dungeon. Of course, it is difficult for him to answer all these questions when a member of his family is on the verge of death. A second later, the guild president had tears in his eyes and decided to end the press conference immediately. It's hard to tell if he was really experiencing difficult emotions or if it was all just part of the plan. When he was informed that the barrier was not responding, Lee-san was delighted and said that they were now heading to the main office. Even though he is the president of the company, he is sometimes frighteningly cold towards his employees. Even his own sister is a pawn when it comes to the guild's interests. There are a lot of people near the portal now. All of them have a direct connection to the new Adral Guild and came here to find their boss. They don't even suspect that Thomas has everything under control and is already near the Temple of the Giants. This place is more like a cemetery. You can't relax and lose concentration here. It was enough to take just a few steps forward, and the stone statues began to come to life. These giant golems are quite high level and are now ready to challenge unexpected guests. The trap is activated as soon as the hunter enters the center. 5 monsters are ready to start the battle. These monsters have no soul, and they are not corpses, so necromancer skills will not help here at all. In this case, you will have to increase the warrior class level and demonstrate martial arts techniques. This entire battle is being watched by Lilu, who has successfully crossed over to the other side of the island. She thought Thomas was a necromancer, but now he was clearly using the warrior class. All the statues turned out to be monsters. If a careless person approaches the altar, he will be instantly surrounded and destroyed. This would happen even to an experienced hunter, but Thomas's instincts and skills are much better than it might seem at first glance. He not only fights back against his opponents, but even acts from a position of strength and destroys them one by one. All this is just a warm-up before the main battle, because there are 3 monsters here that are much more frightening than stone statues. It is unknown how strong these Cyclops are, but their gaze will make any hunter feel fear. By that time, Thomas had already managed to clear the perimeter and destroyed 5 large golems. It is clear to the naked eye that the return stone is shining very brightly, which means that a rupture will occur soon. There is very little time left, so we will have to hurry so that the monsters cannot get out into the outside world. Cyclops are descended from ancient giants and are very dangerous opponents for any warrior. They are not as huge as ogres and do not even have such cruelty and savagery in their blood. Despite all this, the Cyclopes were able to inherit the wisdom of the giants, who had previously flourished as a full-fledged civilization. These guys are very powerful and worthy of being the final boss defending this temple. It seems that one of the Cyclops recognized our main character and said that he did not expect to meet him here. Of course, what monsters know the King of Death and are unlikely to treat him with great respect. As soon as they recognized Thomas, they immediately raised their weapons and began to attack the Necromancer. At the last moment, Rocky appeared and protected his boss with his own head. The Cyclopes clearly did not expect such a turn of events, and even froze for a few seconds, as if hypnotized. They were probably also sent here by Tranit, who is the new order in the universe. The Cyclopes are confident that no one can stop the troops of this powerful deity, especially that guy who escaped from Alphen and has already clearly lost. Thomas does not like being called a coward. He is ready to prove his courage not with beautiful words, but with real actions. He managed to pierce the Cyclops' eye, but was then captured like a small bug. With the help of the tornado technique, he managed to escape from these hellish embraces and prepare for battle again. It turned out that the Cyclops are so powerful that they are ready to activate healing magic at the right moment. Meanwhile, the investigation continued near the portal. Thomas's friends wanted to know what happened to him. The dungeon will soon burst and further conversations will lose their meaning. All that remains is to hope that everything is okay with this guy. Nuna can't believe that Thomas might not return from the dungeon. Then all her hopes for a happy future will be destroyed in an instant. This guy will have to try hard to get out of here alive because defeating 3 Cyclops is not easy at all. Thanks to their gigantic bodies and almost instant regeneration, Cyclopes possess monstrous strength. Lilu watches this battle and cannot even imagine how Thomas expects to save his life. From time to time, he manages to inflict serious injuries, but the healing magic returns the monsters to their original position. They don't get tired at all and calmly continue the battle as if nothing had happened. At this rate, he won't be able to clear the dungeon and the rupture will still occur. Cyclopes have never had regeneration like this before, even though this is their territory, but this is all too unfair. If we think about it more globally, we have to admit that this temple actually belongs to a race of giants. The Cyclopes are not the masters of this territory, they only temporarily occupied it. Thomas called his familiars for help and ordered them to distract the Cyclops for a while. Rocky and Bibi were given some tough assignments, but they didn't even have the option to refuse. Thomas climbed onto the huge statue and acted very quickly and clearly, as if a plan for victory had long been in his head. The Temple of Divine Relics will grant benefits to its worshippers, which is why the Cyclopes have the ability to constantly regenerate. If Thomas understood everything correctly, then he only needs to use the sacred relic, and then he too will have hidden skills. As soon as he touched the giant statue, he immediately felt an incredible surge of energy and confidence. Now we need to challenge the Cyclops again and see what happens. Now his blows finally work as they should. One of the monsters lost its head and now the odds are evened out. If the Cyclopes are still confident that they can destroy this guy, then Thomas is ready to accept their challenge. It didn't even take 2 minutes for the rest of the Cyclopes to be destroyed, and Thomas was finally freed from the need for constant protection. He gained a lot of experience points, as well as various skills related to the Cyclops race. Now it's time to get your hands on the Stone of Return, but it has disappeared somewhere. It turned out that Lilu had finally entered the scene, taking advantage of the fact that Thomas was busy with other monsters. She managed to take the return stone into her hands, and now the dirty game begins. All this time, Lilu was following her brother's orders, who ordered her to force Thomas into the dungeon breach. At first, the girl did not understand why this needed to be done, but her brother tried to explain everything. Thomas's abilities raise many questions, as does his past, and the dungeon rift is the best place to find out all his secrets. You need to watch this guy and try to find out about his abilities and skills. Maybe there is someone who helps him get out of trouble. For a high-ranking huntress, such a task is not something very pleasant, but she has no choice. If Thomas is not stopped, His guild will soon take over the rights to all the dungeons and push their competitors out of the market. Therefore, the Hwarang Guild must get rid of the Necromancer before he becomes too powerful. He actually managed to clear the 6th-level dungeon by himself, and Lilu is willing to admit that he is very strong. Soon the dungeon will burst, and Thomas wants to get the returned stone, but his wishes are not destined to come true. Lilu decided to attack this guy and said that she had personal reasons for not letting him get out of here alive. Meanwhile, the Adral Guild representatives continued to put pressure on the soldiers. Lisan decided to intervene in the conversation. He did it with such an air as if he was ready to destroy everyone in his path. Very soon he learned that these people came to find out at least some information about their boss. It seems that Thomas and his staff don't understand the hints at all. They are all just newbies in the game of real titans. The dungeon will soon burst, so they all better get away from this place. Lisan is confident that the break will still happen, because Thomas is obliged to clear the dungeon alone. Guild boss Adral may be underestimated by some, but his friends certainly have no doubts about him. At this point, information appeared that the barrier was indeed no longer responding. To do this, you need to look at what happened in the dungeon over the last hour. Here one could see a serious fight between 2 high-ranking hunters. Each of them tried to demonstrate their full potential and close combat skills. This was the perfect opportunity for Lilu's Shadow Break. We've already seen her use this skill to destroy monsters in one hit. Thomas was unable to dodge. Even his reaction could not cope with this danger. The familiars had been watching the battle all this time and realized that it was time to intervene and save their boss. Rocky is always ready to put his body on the line to protect Thomas, even if he is facing a real killer. Thomas activated the ghost armor and ordered the familiar not to interfere with the process. He is in no way inferior in strength to his opponent, but his speed leaves much to be desired. Lilu really lives up to her A rank, which is why Thomas set up the barrier. He plans to block her attacks at first, but that doesn't mean he's lost confidence in his ability to win. No matter what intrigues are conceived against Thomas, he will still destroy all the plans of his rivals. If this requires showing everything he is capable of, it will not be difficult. The battle took place in different areas of the giant's temple, and all the forest dwellers felt these flashes of energy. It feels like 2 deities have descended to Earth to determine the strongest. Lilu was constantly attacking. She didn't care that Thomas was considered the most promising hunter in the country. She tried to concentrate on her own skills and not give in to him in any way. Her aggressive style created a lot of problems, but sooner or later the Necromancer had to adapt to this battle. You need to endure the first attacks and finally find the weak spots in your opponent's defense. It seems that the Necromancer's barrier has broken, and now he is starting to experience difficulties on a double scale. The lunar splitting technique is ready to tear Thomas apart right here and now. His familiars are frightened because throughout the battle, Thomas is inferior to his opponent in speed. There was a clash of 2 forces, and it remains to be seen whether Thomas was able to defend himself from this blow. Lilu hasn't enjoyed a fight this much in a long time. She's sure that blow sent Thomas to hell. She doesn't understand that the fun is just beginning, and it's too early to say goodbye to each other. It seems that the Necromancer had already devised a strategy to deceive his rival. All this time he pretended to be cornered and hid his real intentions. Now it's his turn to attack, especially with the help of his shadow soldiers, who have been locked up for a long time. The skeletons are a great distraction and give their boss the opportunity to land that devastating blow that can end the battle. Thanks to this victory, Thomas reached level 50 and unlocked the resurrection skill for his familiar. He also unlocked the skill of exploding corpses, all thanks to defeating a high-ranking huntress. As soon as the barrier disappeared, the Necromancer everyone had been waiting for so long immediately appeared from it. His friends were the first to rush to the meeting to make sure he was okay. They were surprised to see his face, probably the first time Thomas had been seriously wounded in battle. Everyone around was happy to see him, but Nuna had completely different feelings towards the Necromancer. She burst into tears, began to hug Thomas and talk about how she was very worried. She even accused him of reckless behavior, because being in a dungeon on the 6th level is mortally dangerous. I had to calm this little princess down and also see with my own eyes that her burn had finally disappeared. Now Thomas will have to use this ointment, otherwise he will continue to be forced to walk around with his face cut in 2. After that, Nuna decided to talk about the ring that Thomas gave her. It was clear that this topic was very tense for her. The girl couldn't believe her ears when Thomas pretended not to understand what she was talking about. She reminded him of their date and said that she understood perfectly well that he had set it all up in order to propose to her. Thomas replied that she had misunderstood everything and that Nuna hadn't felt such shame since high school. Brian had wanted to confess everything for a long time, but until the very end, he hoped that some of his actions would remain a secret. At that moment, the president of the Hwarang Guild approached the hunter and said that he was very glad to see him. After that, he began asking questions about the team's leader, the hunter Leela, who was supposed to carry out tasks together with Thomas. It's not hard to guess that Lilu was following her boss's orders, but there's too little evidence to make any accusations. Thomas calmly replied that Lilu was dead. She was a strong woman, but she was not at all lucky. Lisan tried to immediately understand what happened. He wondered who exactly killed his sister, Thomas, or the monster in the dungeon. The necromancer calmly replied that she was killed by an immortal monster, after which he had no intention of continuing this stupid conversation. The guild president refuses to believe that his sister was killed by some unknown monster. The dungeon did not burst, and the guild's chief hunter died under strange circumstances. Everything that was planned collapsed in an instant, and one person is to blame for all of this, a necromancer from the Seoul station. Meanwhile, Thomas returned to the hotel and decided to change his style a little after recovering from his injuries. The Cyclopes in the 6th level dungeon were very dangerous, but the monsters on Alphen were much stronger. Now on TV, Dr. James Toppler is ready to give answers to your questions about the dungeons. He explains that the monsters are not life forms from our planet. He has a hypothesis that the dungeons are roads for monsters to get to the ground. Even after creating the gate, they cannot pass through it freely, so the rupture occurs after 30 days. Return stones stabilize the dungeons and also serve as the key to exiting this portal. If you look at the stones from the monster's point of view, then a month after the dungeon appeared, they could represent the key to opening the gates to the earth. Sounds pretty convincing, even for a hunter who has lived for several decades in the world of Alphen. The first few days, the monsters from the dungeon are too weak, and before, people suffered heavy losses just because they lacked preparation. Nowadays, after the dungeon shock, high-ranking portals have started to appear more and more often. It's only a matter of time before a level 7 dungeon appears. But why did such a phenomenon occur in the first place? The dungeons are not just mines. The heliotropes that are brought out of the dungeon are actually bait. The more heliotropes there are on Earth, the better the environment will be for monsters. The energy contained in these heliotropes is known as mana on Alphen, and now the monsters are forcing people to increase the amount of mana on Earth. To do this, you need to force people to take crystals out into the outside world and create an ideal environment for monsters. After this, Thomas received an urgent call and learned that a press conference was being held. He was clearly unhappy about being forced to answer uncomfortable questions, but the public wants to know the truth. Many people gathered to understand what exactly happened in the 6th level dungeon. Mr. Chan apologized for failing to refuse the interview, saying Thomas could avoid answering difficult questions. Also at the press conference will be the president of the Hwarang Guild, who clearly has an ace up his sleeve. To begin with, reporters began asking questions to him, because everyone wants to know who is behind the fact that the hunters went together to clear the dungeons. Lisan replied that his sister had made the decision to act recklessly and that he had nothing to do with it. He assured that Leela was simply assisted by another hunter who is in the spotlight. Now all the questions turn to Thomas to find out what exactly happened in the dungeon. Everyone wants to know the cause of Lilu's death, as well as the details of the raid. Lisan enjoyed it when reporters asked difficult questions, which is why he created this press conference. He called his influential partners and said that they needed to make sure that all the media in Korea attacked the talented hunter. Mr. Chan began to become noticeably nervous. It felt like he and his boss were being interrogated in court. If they had known that this would happen, they would have immediately refused to hold a press conference. Thomas looked confidently at the journalist and asked him to stop talking all this nonsense. It was an unexpected turn of events that no one at the press conference could have foreseen. Even Master Lisan was shocked when the necromancer began to speak so confidently. Then, even stranger things happened. Thomas got up and kicked Lisan in the head. It was a shock for absolutely all conference participants. No one could even imagine that things would go so far. Thomas understands that they are trying to set him up and is not ready to get involved in this dirty game. He doesn't care that they're on live TV right now because he's not acting to be a perfect character. He doesn't care that the whole country is looking at him now. In the world of Alphen, the population was incredibly large and he destroyed them all. So when some pathetic bugs start to crush him, Thomas is not going to turn a blind eye to it. All the representatives of the Alphen world were watching his every move, so the live broadcast of one country meant absolutely nothing to him. If he wants to beat up the president of a powerful guild on live TV, then he can afford it. Brian couldn't believe he was seeing this with his own eyes. It seemed like his boss really didn't care about public opinion. Thomas is currently at the top of Google search queries, but that's not the most important thing. Brian also noted that the theme of the Holy Woman is currently gaining popularity. He started watching the video and saw how a beautiful princess was healing people from various diseases. People from all over the country gathered to see it with their own eyes. Saint Marty can help each of them with her incredible skills. It seems like her beauty goes beyond the boundaries of our world, not to mention her skills. Now in front of her is a man sitting in a wheelchair. This is Mr. Smith, who has a congenital weakness of the body. After this woman's touch, his legs regained their strength and he stood up on his own. This man cannot believe that all this is really happening. It seems to him that he has entered a parallel reality. Marty replied that she was a messenger from God and said that she always enjoyed trying to help people in need. Such skills are truly amazing. Hundreds of thousands of people already follow her and are ready to become members of the Arya Order. No one has yet doubted her abilities. It seems that many professional hunters have their eyes on her. She came out of the dungeon and could not speak, but learned the earthly language in just a few days. In fact, before us is the servant of the goddess Arya, the goddess of fertility and provision in the world of Alphen. Not only does she possess magical healing, but she can also convey Arya's prediction through divine revelation. Murdy has the ability to predict the location and time of the appearance of dungeons, thanks to which hunters were able to clear such places very quickly. To use this power, you need to fulfill the conditions. Found a squad of paladins who serve the goddess Arya. There have already been many applications to join the paladin squad. This woman is currently at the highest rank in history, with SS rank skills. Meanwhile, the same crazy press conference after clearing the 6th level dungeon continued. Mr. Chen tried to stop his boss and warned that they could get into serious trouble. By that time, the president of the Hwarang Guild already looked like a very badly beaten man, because that was exactly what he was. Now Thomas threw it on Paul and turned to the reporters to talk about the death of the hunter Lilu. He honestly admitted that Lilu tried to kill him, and now it is obvious that she failed. Thomas can't believe that journalists have the nerve to accuse him of premeditated murder. If he ever sees a journalist asking questions like that again, he'll tear him to pieces, even if it's live on air. After this, he and his assistant immediately left the press conference. Thomas told Mr. Chan that everything that was said at the press conference was true. The Hwarang Guild was hunting him, and he had no choice but to accept the terms of their dirty game. It worked to his advantage because he destroyed his rival and openly stated what had happened. People who are afraid of their opponents begin to act behind their backs and choose cunning methods. At such times, Thomas always begins to act openly in order to lift the curtain of darkness of his competitors. Then the enemies start to have a headache because they will not be able to plot in secret. Thomas masterfully changed the mood of society. At first, everyone suspected him of murder, and now everyone is asking one question: was the Hwarang Guild really trying to destroy the Necromancer? People have no way to prove what happened in the dungeon, so it's a win-win strategy. Now Mr. Chan is happy with his boss and is ready to clean up the mess together. In fact, he didn't understand anything. Because dealing with the guild's problems is his job, Thomas doesn't intend to waste his time on this. Mr. Chan must show why he is the vice president and bring his best skills to the table. His boss just created chaos, and now the assistant has to sort it out on his own. A crowd of people formed near the exit. All these residents had been hiding in shelters for a long time when an underground passage formed in their area of the city. They came to thank their hero, who finally gave them the opportunity to return home. Now Thomas has before him different layers of the population, all of whom are equally happy and contented. Here you can find people of different ages, but they are all united by sincere gratitude to the hero. These things really make me happy and motivate me to continue my journey despite all the obstacles. Now Thomas is a hero who protected an entire city, and that cannot be taken away from him. After some time, the press conference ended and all the journalists left the room. By that time, the Hwarang Guild president had finally regained consciousness. He is clearly distressed by what happened, as he was publicly accused of dirty deeds in front of the entire country and beaten as punishment. Now Lee Sin will do everything possible to destroy Thomas and prevent him from ascending to Olympus. Let's move to the other end of the world, to America, where the headquarters of the Titan Guild and the Order of Arya are located. Here you can find the very same servant of the goddess who prays in front of the statue of Arya. A little later, a hunter approached her to tell her how the process of creating a squad of paladins was going. They have received a lot of applications now, so everything is going as planned. The Order of Paladins will consist of heroes who will go to a holy war to save Alphen. We need to retake Alphen. It will be too late if their main forces invade the land, so we need to hurry. This planet is facing disaster if humanity does not stay ahead of the game. Soon the hunters will face a holy war to protect both worlds. It will be legendary in any case. If this is really true and Marty is not lying, then it is unlikely that the Titan Guild will be able to solve this problem alone. They will need help from people all over the world. The best of the best will be needed here. In her prediction, Marty named one person and her assistants managed to find this guy. When she saw his photo, her face immediately changed, and it was immediately obvious that there was some kind of backstory between them. Now she looks at the ruthless and immortal Necromancer. It is hard to believe that Thomas is the very savior from the prophecies. Almost a week had passed after the 6th-rank dungeon had been cleared, and a summons to court had arrived at the Adrol Guild. All this is connected with the act of violence against Lisan. This guy immediately complained to the police and accused Thomas of beating. I should have killed this guy from the very beginning, and then there would have been a lot less problems. Thomas planned to forget about this incident. His partners do not understand how you can forget how you beat up a man in front of the whole country. They were even more shocked when Thomas said that they would need to come to the Hwarang Guild office before heading to the police. Thomas asked everyone to calm down and said that everything was going according to his plan. Mr. Chung was smiling, but it was clear that he was trying in every way to put pressure on his boss and hand this matter over to him. After some time, he succeeded, because if Thomas goes to the enemy guild, it will not end well. Mr. Chan also wants to hire additional staff, as their guild is receiving more and more orders. Bloodstones continue to accumulate on the ground. At this rate, not just monsters from Alphen will appear, but servants of Tranet. The servants are 72 captains under the immediate command of their general. Each of them is extremely dangerous and much stronger than humans. Even Thomas and his army could not stop them on Alphen. Now his team is much weaker than in the past, so it is difficult to even dream of winning the battle. The only one of the team who is awake is Manny, but he is not the guy you can count on. That's why he allowed Mr. Chang to recruit as many hunters as possible and train them to run the business. Meanwhile, Manny must follow the boss because they have a particularly important matter. Looks like this guy needs to up his skills since he's the only one awakened from their team. Thomas personally created all the conditions for the young hunter to become much stronger. Manny always dreamed of becoming a high-class fire mage and never deviated from his goals. Unfortunately, his path was strewn with obstacles, and so far he had only carried out the most unpleasant assignments. He is ready to become much stronger even if it means reaching his limit. Thomas is ready to challenge his student and turn him into a high-ranking hunter in 1 month. After this conversation, training turned into a real hell, which is difficult to compare with anything. Manny tried not to relax, but the killer's skeletons constantly pursued him at every step. He had to activate his magic again and prove that he was worthy of his skills. So far, his level doesn't even allow him to destroy a skeleton, but training can make a real champion out of a slug. To do this, you will have to go through incredible trials and give up the fear of death. For now, Thomas is dissatisfied with his student, saying that his thinking lacks flexibility. To survive, you need to constantly become stronger, because the monsters in the dungeons will be much more powerful than the skeletons. Only by renouncing your own fear of death and jumping into the darkness can you gain incredible power. After such training, Manny felt extremely exhausted and lethargic. He didn't even have the strength to eat dinner, but he understood that he would have to get used to all this. Training really takes all his life energy, but that's the way of champions. Right now on TV, they're showing that same Saint Marty healing people in need in Manhattan. Thomas looked more closely and realized that she reminded him of someone. This girl is beautiful. She looks like an elf and has already made Manny fall in love with her. A little later, Thomas heard that the girl was a follower of Arya and realized that he had not imagined it. Now all that remains is to understand why she is in this world and what goals she is pursuing. I had to immediately return to the guild's main office to meet with Chan. Thomas ordered his assistant to immediately buy him tickets to America and sort out the visa issues. Previously, the Titan Guild saved someone in the dungeon. It was a girl named Marty. People have more and more questions about the power of this woman. Everyone wants to understand where she gets her energy from. The Titan Guild has sent out an invitation to a general meeting to guilds from all over the world. Thomas and his guild are also invited. Mr. Chan also delivered the skill book and enhancement stones that the boss requested. Now they have already managed to spend most of the budget, so they need to clear the dungeon and earn some money. Before going to America, the financial problems of the Adral Guild need to be settled. The Necromancer understands this perfectly well. Mr. Chang said that there was one place where a 6th-rank dungeon had appeared. The problem is that this dungeon is in North Korea, but there are no other options. It is indeed hot in North Korea, although even without the underground life in this place is not like a sweet dream. For the slightest mistake here, you can not only go to prison, but also say goodbye to life. A soldier who ran away from monsters and did not protect civilians does not deserve the president's indulgence. Here everything is decided by force, no one is willing to tolerate mistakes. This man only wanted to survive at any cost, but as a result he signed his own death warrant. The Republic cannot defend itself against the threat. It looks like they will have to ask South Korea for help. To do this, you will have to invite the greatest hero of South Korea, who is called the Necromancer. The supreme leader of the DPRK is ready to take extreme measures. Apparently, Kim Jong-un is a big fan of Thomas. At first, Thomas wasn't sure if Mr. Chan was serious, but now there was no doubt about it. He really will have to fly to North Korea to earn some money for the guild. He will have a personal escort. Lieutenant Jennifer is once again ready to keep him company. It is always a pleasure to do business with someone you have dealt with in the past. There are usually a lot of soldiers at military installations, but it is still very calm and quiet here. Few areas of North Korea were well developed, but most of the country lagged behind modern civilization. There are very few awakened warriors in this country, so it is difficult for them to assemble a team consisting of high-class hunters. Until this point, they were actively supported by China, but this time they decided to defend themselves and failed. All this time, China only demonstratively watched and left North Korea with no choice. They had to ask the whole world for help. They probably refused China's help only to avoid sharing the profits with them. In any case, you need to quickly clear the dungeon and return to your home. Thomas's only condition was that he be allowed to spend 2 weeks in the dungeon from the start of the first purge. Talks between the North and South will begin after the arrival of the North Korean delegation. Thomas made a fairly minor request, so everything should go smoothly if the dungeon is cleared. If it fails, the result will be the death of the Necromancer, and North Korea will suffer huge financial losses. Because of this, relations between the North and South could become even worse than ever, so the situation is quite tense. Thomas holds everything in his hands, and it is up to him to decide how events will develop between the two powers. Soon they arrived at the Sun Memorial Palace, where many soldiers and military equipment had gathered. This palace represents North Korea. The dungeon is very close, so military equipment was collected here. Very soon, Thomas and Jennifer were invited to enter the main office of this building. It is immediately obvious that the Necromancer is not at all nervous. He is being forced to wait, but he does not even pay attention to it. Soon, the first chairman of the National Defense Committee of North Korea entered the office, who wanted to meet Thomas personally. When Thomas saw this little pig, he even laughed a little. The soldiers ordered him to immediately pull himself together and salute the first chairman. After this, there was a handshake, although, of course, everyone around was extremely tense. Thomas acted as if he was talking to some homeless person on the street and not to such a serious person. Jennifer already understood that a nuclear war would start now and they would all die just because of this fool. Of course, he had done similar things before, but no one thought that his recklessness would reach a new level. The soldiers were ready to make this guy suffer for all his stupid jokes. Even now, Thomas did not lose his mental balance and remained as cool as possible. The chairman, on the contrary, laughed and said that this was exactly the kind of behavior he expected from the strongest man in the South. He suggested that they sit down first and get to know each other better, since they would be working closely together. Jennifer has already managed to say goodbye to life and even write a will. It seems that all this was in vain. Thomas immediately decided to get down to business. He was going to go to the dungeon immediately. The soldiers cannot tolerate such impudent behavior. If any of them spoke to the chairman like that, they would have long since become food for worms. The chairman, on the contrary, is pleased. He likes strong and straightforward personalities. He already knows about Thomas's conditions and is confident that it will not harm North Korea. They are ready to fulfill his request if only he clears the dungeon, and all they need to do is take a friendly photo. When Thomas and Lieutenant Jennifer went outside, I had to explain to this hunter that he needed to be able to choose the right words. It's unlikely that this guy can be retrained. His excessive self-confidence always goes over the edge. Now it's time to head into the dungeon and finally do your long-awaited job. Everyone expects Thomas to return safe and sound. Otherwise, a serious cataclysm will occur. All this time, the representatives of South Korea have been watched very closely, and there is nothing strange about this. North Korea's first chairman thinks Thomas is an amazing guy. Every country wants to have such a strong hunter at its disposal, but not everyone is lucky. Kim Jong-un is confident that Thomas will cope, otherwise he will regret being born. Very soon, the Necromancer found himself in a dark dungeon and began to look around. He realized that he was in the center of the Trinet colony and that it smelled incredibly bad. If any of the 72 commanders came out to meet the hunter, Thomas would be ready to tear him to shreds. There are no commanders here yet, but that's not good news because the opponents are going to defeat him with numbers. Low-level monsters can be very annoying, and a summoned familiar is essential. A monster named Doso appeared to protect its owner from any danger. Within a few minutes, these terrible insects experienced incredible pain. The first wave of monsters was quickly cleared out, and now skeleton soldiers and skeleton wizards can come to the rescue. Thomas has leveled up a lot lately, and his army is now much bigger. This time they will have to contain a second wave of insects that are more dangerous than the previous praying mantises. Spiders can be very dangerous to fry, and are really something to be wary of even though their energy level is low. They came with a monster that has great strength and high defense. His name is Rocto. Doso has been waiting for a new assignment for a long time, and now he is ready to really stretch his legs. All familiars and summoned soldiers prepared for battle. Thanks to the increase in level, Thomas opened a new weapon, the Death Axe. If the spiders really intended to win through numbers, their plans would be ruined. The opponent has called in too many shadow soldiers to help, and now the spiders have no chance. Also, don't forget about the familiar, which has much more serious skills than ordinary skeletons. If you add to this a leader who leads everyone, you get a truly hellish mixture. Thomas cornered his most dangerous opponent into a confined space to finish him off personally. Today he is ready to activate new skills and defeat all enemies with the help of his technique. Within a second there was a lot of green blood around, which belonged to a huge monster named Rocto. After these events, 12 whole days passed in this dungeon, during which time countless monsters were destroyed. Thomas came across a colony called an incubator, where monsters are raised. It is unlikely that they will be able to meet the owner of the colony, although of course they would like to see this guy. The Necromancer called upon the corpses that had joined him after previous battles. He ordered them to immediately attack and destroy the entire colony that could cause problems in the future. This is the perfect moment to activate that very skill you got in the 6th level dungeon. This skill is called Corpse Explosion, where Thomas can call in soldiers to help him and blow them up at the desired geolocation. It all looked as efficient as possible, and after the explosion, the return stone was discovered. He was located right next to a fragment of a dimension. Such a symbiosis is a great rarity. The dimension fragment is a mysterious artifact that makes up the material world. It is the fragment that is used as material for the formation of spatial sacred land. At the same time, interesting events were taking place in the secret room of the DPRK chairman. Here you can find very interesting items that are part of a personal museum. Now there will be a portrait of the ruler hanging here together with the best hunter of South Korea. It is really strange. Before this, there was a completely different photo here, but now it's time to say goodbye to the past. After this, the soldiers said that they had received news that the chairman was dreaming of hearing. Mr. Necromancer successfully cleared the station of all monsters. He fulfilled his part of the deal. We must treat the hero of the DPRK well and do everything possible to ensure that he returns here as if it were his home. Apparently, the commander of the special unit, Mr. Guan, is not particularly pleased with the honors that the South Korean hunter is receiving. He can't believe that this guy single-handedly managed to do all the dirty work that the DPRK army couldn't do. Thomas is called crazy. Apparently his skills as an awakened one are not inferior to those of Murdy. The Necromancer noticed foreign reporters who caught his attention. At that moment, Jennifer ran up to him and said that she was incredibly happy to congratulate him on the successful cleanup. For a long time, South and North Korea had been waiting for the raid to end. The negotiating team believed that Thomas would likely fail the tests, which is why they came here to resolve the potential conflict. In any case, Thomas is not going to remain idle and wants to return to the dungeon. Jennifer tried to stop him and asked him to at least rest a little, but this guy doesn't listen to anyone. After this episode, a soldier from the DPRK ran up to her and said that he urgently needed a necromancer. It looks like something very important has happened, and now serious problems may arise. The chairman of the DPRK was incredibly angry and kept repeating that they could not lose in South Korea. Time moves at a completely different pace in the dungeon. Thomas had already spent 2 weeks here. He doesn't even have to destroy his opponents personally. His soldiers do all the dirty work for him. Thanks to this, he leveled up again and unlocked various privileges. Clearing a dungeon like this doesn't even take much strength and energy, but it gives a lot of benefits. It's only worth joining the battle occasionally to add motivation to your soldiers. He has already managed to see all the privileges of his new skills and is now ready to move on to the next step. It's time to call for help the Goblin, who is a shadow copy of the Necromancer. The shadow spirit is able to read its host's emotions, share thoughts, and take control of it if the host is destroyed. Apparently, these guys have a special relationship, and Thomas clearly doesn't like this goblin. The shadow soldier is not averse to taking over his boss's body in order to transform into a full-fledged personality. Thomas decided to return him to the shadow world and call him only when absolutely necessary. It appears that during this conversation, the perimeter was cleared of skeletons. This is not the first time Thomas has cleared this dungeon, so now it is time to return to the outside world. As soon as he came out of the portal, Jennifer immediately fell to her knees and began to beg the hunter to rest at least a little. Thomas must have missed a lot of interesting events during his time in the dungeon. These conversations are repeated over and over again, with Jennifer constantly trying to persuade Thomas to get some rest. He never pays attention to her and returns to the dungeon time after time as if it were some kind of walk for him. Jennifer constantly reminds him that the situation can quickly get out of control, so it is better for him to be in the outside world. Negotiations between North and South Korea are still ongoing, and it is better to be close. Recently, negotiations have accelerated and both sides have moved closer to cooperation. Thomas finally listened to the lieutenant and decided to personally go to the negotiation room. After waiting for several hours, he prepared to leave the place. But one of the soldiers asked him to write his name on a piece of paper. It would be a great victory for him to get an autograph from South Korea's strongest hunter. Thomas signed the piece of paper without thinking and said goodbye as if nothing had happened. When he left, he felt that something was wrong, as if a hidden camera was playing a trick on him. He ordered the goblin to attach itself to the ruler of the DPRK and monitor his every move. Meanwhile, Commander Guan also gave orders to his soldiers and told them to remain unnoticed while spying on the Necromancer. He doesn't like the way Thomas looks down on North Korea, and he wants to get revenge on the guy for being overconfident. The chairman wants to win Thomas over to his side so that his country can prosper. Not everyone agrees with this approach because cooperation with the enemy is even worse than death. After a small banquet, Thomas was about to return to the dungeon for another cleanup. Today is the last time he will descend to this place, and the soldiers wish him luck. In reality, it's just acting, and they are trying to carry out a terrible plan. One of the soldiers decided to catch up with the hunters at the last moment to tell him something. He said he had an urgent message from the president and conveyed greetings from a North Korean general. A second later, there was a huge explosion. The detonator worked without delay. After everyone around heard the explosion, nothing changed globally. The barrier still exists. Couldn't the hunter have died instantly? He probably has very serious injuries now and has become easy prey for monsters. Guan is confident that Thomas will easily surrender and die, and the operation to return North Korea to greatness will be successfully completed. 2 days have passed since Thomas entered the dungeon, and Jennifer is starting to get nervous. Thomas was supposed to show up yesterday, which could cause North Korea to ask for serious compensation. After Thomas entered the dungeon, a foreign reporter took some photographs. These pictures clearly show the North Korean soldier following the hunter. There is an urgent need to begin an investigation and protest against North Korea's actions. On the other hand, Jennifer and the government representatives are now on foreign territory and do not feel safe. They don't want to just sit and wait, but they have no other choice. We must hope that Thomas managed to survive and will finally return from the dungeon soon. Meanwhile, news that secret photographs had been taken spread across all the newspapers. The ruler of the DPRK also learned about these photographs and was incredibly excited. He said to find these terrible reporters and bring them personally to him so that the execution could take place. Another day has passed since Thomas entered the dungeon, and the famous Necromancer still hasn't returned. Jennifer loses faith in miracles. As a professional soldier, she must rely on logic, not expectations. The girl lost all faith at that very moment she heard loud screams in the street. Everyone around was talking about how the barrier had disappeared somewhere, and the Necromancer had finally left hell. Everyone around was very excited and trying to figure out what was going on. Thomas looked incredibly calm, but said that he would destroy everyone responsible for this situation. He ordered that the ruler of North Korea be brought here immediately, or this country would be destroyed right now. The soldiers took out their guns and tried to detain the aggressive hunter, but he survived the huge explosion. Should he really be afraid of an ordinary pistol? Thomas was ready to destroy everyone around him, but Bibi intervened in time. She activated the sleep spell, and everyone around immediately relaxed. Soon, several more soldiers ran over here who are still very aggressive. They immediately declared that their republic was not weak at all, and they would not allow the scum from South Korea to get to the chairman. It looks like these guys are awakened. Some of them are quite high level. Such obstacles must be destroyed only with the help of the transparent spear skill. If these guys think that Thomas went through adversity only to fail, then they are seriously mistaken. He doesn't care at all how strong these hunters are. If he has a goal, then he will stop at nothing until he achieves the result. Jennifer soon appeared nearby and began begging Thomas to stop. It turns out that she is also an awakened hunter who has a tamer class. Her characteristic is great loyalty and pride, but her rank is too low. Jennifer understands that it will be impossible to fix the situation if Thomas does not stop now. The hunter is going to destroy the fat pig, who is called the chairman of the Republic. He feels betrayed. Jennifer was right, only now she learned that a spy from North Korea tried to kill Thomas. Even despite this, the lieutenant tries to calm the hunter down because his actions could start a full-fledged war. Another full-fledged conflict is brewing. Thomas said that he will kill Jennifer if she does not step aside. It seems that the lieutenant is ready to accept this challenge and die to fulfill her duties. Thomas tried to manipulate Jennifer, but he realized in time that he had chosen the wrong strategy. As much as he wanted to take revenge, killing a lieutenant of his own country was a big mistake. It's much better to just knock her out with one punch and solve all the problems. This guy knows how to lie and do things in order to relax his opponent's vigilance. Now he can go to meet the chairman and finally take revenge for the betrayal. Of course, the soldiers were prepared for such a turn of events and opened merciless fire on the enemy. The ghost armor was activated to protect the Necromancer. Thomas easily passed through the defensive redoubts and reached the main door. The fat piglet must come out. Otherwise, today they will make a delicious shashlik out of it. The soldiers try to calm the president and say that the bunker is ready to withstand even an atomic bomb. All these words sound convincing, but in reality the situation is much more critical. The iron doors of the bunker were destroyed thanks to a familiar named Rocky. Now Thomas can finally meet with the president and have a full conversation. The soldiers were destroyed in a few seconds. Now the piglet is forced to explain his behavior. It was time to call for help the goblin who had been watching the chairman all this time. Thanks to the goblin's skills, you can see all of the fat boar's memories. It turned out that he had done nothing at all and had learned of the betrayal at the last moment. Thomas has gotten himself into a terrible situation again because of his hasty conclusions. This guy is incorrigible. The soldiers acted according to the orders of Commander Guan. Kim Jong-un only found out about this after the explosion. Thomas ordered him to immediately find the man who had organized all this. The chairman swore that he would fulfill this request and would definitely punish the traitor. After this, you can calmly shake hands and apologize for the misunderstanding that occurred here. The President of the Republic had not felt such a level of bliss for a long time. Toma didn't even suspect that in this country he had the most devoted fan in the world. The President of the Republic collected many artifacts which he never even used. You need to be gentle with this guy because he's not as bad as he seems. Thomas decided to use the goblin's memory and personally find the traitor. In the corridor, he saw Jennifer, who had already managed to recover her strength after the knockout. Apparently, she is very unhappy with what happened and doesn't even know that everything ended very calmly. As soon as Jennifer heard that it was all over, she immediately thought that the North Korean president was dead. Thoughts of a terrible war that would cover South Korea like a typhoon were already flashing in her head. Thomas noticed that this girl is extremely loyal and truly deserves respect. Although she does not have a pure and innocent soul, Thomas saw such a fire in her eyes for the first time. At that moment, he realized that he had to offer her a job in his guild and quit her service. People like Jennifer are bound to rise to the top, and the career ladder is much more attractive in the guild than in government agencies. The lieutenant has walked the path of a soldier for a long time, but if she wants to stop the war and prevent bloodshed, she must join Thomas and forget her past. 3 days passed after these events. The ruler of North Korea caught Guan and everyone who was involved in the crime. As always, there were innocent people among those caught. It seems that there is no complete justice in this country. Kim Jong-un was sure that the army captain was also involved in the fact that his museum was robbed, but in fact, it was Thomas who took all these artifacts for himself. Of course, the ruler will never believe this because he is the biggest fan of the Korean hunter. By that time, Lieutenant Jennifer and the Necromancer had finally returned to South Korea. Thomas leveled up and filled his inventory and even found a new worker for his guild. The trip to the neighboring country was very successful. Now it's time to go to the United States of America. Thomas can't wait to meet Marty and ask her all the questions he wants to know. The situation in North Korea was soon covered by all the world's television channels. The coup d'etat almost happened because of the desire for power that took hold of a captain of the North Korean army. The awakened are divided into two sides. Among them, there are those who protect people from monsters and do good deeds. However, we should not forget that there will always be those who can easily commit crimes and commit terrible acts. If it weren't for Hunter Thomas, there is a high probability that the government in North Korea would have changed. This means that the Necromancer had a huge impact on the positive relations between the two close powers. In connection with this, they plan to award him with a presidential order. Brian doesn't believe what they say on TV. He knows his boss very well and understands that Thomas doesn't know how to do tasks perfectly. Most likely, Thomas is blackmailing the ruler of North Korea and extorting a number of benefits. While not everyone agrees with Brian's theory, most guild members are still confident that Thomas can do something good. Manny remembers very well how he first met Thomas before clearing the dungeon. Then he learned that this guy is not as perfect as he seems, but that does not mean that he has a black soul. In any case, everyone should think about everything that happened. It cannot be ruled out that Thomas really did steal artifacts from the Kim Jong-un Museum. Soon, Thomas finally returned to the guild and noticed that his employees were talking furiously about something. He guessed that they were discussing his actions, although he did not press the employees too hard. In the evening, they went to the company restaurant to relax a little and celebrate the boss's return. The affairs of their guild are improving every day and the future looks very bright. Thomas is not going to meet the president and receive a special order. He said Mr. Chan should refuse the invitation and say Thomas deserved much more. It would not be easy, since Mr. Chang would have to personally face the troubles that would follow from refusing to meet with the president. By this time, Brian had drunk enough alcohol to be able to joke constantly and not shut up. He said that there is one person who is much more popular than Thomas, a woman who calls herself the Saint of the Order of Arya. Nowadays, only the lazy don't talk about her healing abilities. Marty has become a world celebrity. Thomas was not at all surprised when he was shown this video. He calmly stated that he had known this woman for many years. He then told me that 5 years ago he disappeared and ended up on a distant planet called Alphen. At first, everyone around thought it was just an innocent joke. But then Thomas said that he was not joking at all. This planet was inhabited not only by humans, but also by monsters and hybrids that they had to fight for over 20 years. Eventually, the Necromancer managed to return to Earth where 4 times less time had passed. Now it becomes clear why Thomas gained such incredible strength. If you calculate everything correctly, it becomes clear that the Necromancer is now over 40 years old. Thomas doesn't know how Marty got to Earth, which is why he wants to go to America and find out for himself. He considered this woman his friend, but does not rule out that now everything could have changed. Even now, Marty feels the ruthless and immortal Necromancer approaching her. To trace their backstory, we need to go back 5 years and see what happened on the planet Alphen. Lady Murdy arrived to her assistance and looked very serious. She asked the general if he was sure that everything would go as it should. Now they are in the Valley of Death, from which almost no one has ever returned alive. Now the passage through this valley is the only way to stay alive. We cannot stop, because Tranet's army is always nearby. Soon the soldiers reported that someone was flying near them. The captain quickly ordered the warriors to prepare for a clash with the monsters. Within a second, he was left without a head, although he was the strongest warrior in the army. Marty looked up at the sky and saw the very man who had killed the captain. In front of her was Thomas, who was unhappy that the dogs from the Alliance decided to show up in this place. He believes that the path through the Valley of Death is the surest way to commit suicide. This is how the Necromancer met Arya's follower. By now, Thomas and his friends had drunk too many bottles of alcohol to feel fresh. Brian has drunk more than anyone, so he is no longer able to keep his back straight. It's time to talk about what worries most employees, that is, Thomas's behavior. It would be much better to meet the president and accept his award than to make the president your own enemy. Thomas used to worry about the country and care about how others looked at him because he cared about public opinion. Now everything has changed. Soon the time will come when the dungeons in the world will burst at the same time. The future catastrophe will be incredibly terrible. Then laws and authority will cease to exist. Humans won't be able to stop the monsters that come out of these dungeons, because by that time the monsters will have evolved. Now everyone thinks that the monster from the 6th level dungeon is a dangerous creature, but in reality it is just a pet dog. When a real disaster happens, the monsters will be comparable to tigers and bears. Even dragons will appear on Earth. Hunters will face an unprecedented threat. Modern firearms will be useless, even against the ghosts that will fly everywhere. Nuclear weapons won't work because they are a direct path to suicide. The world will collapse, and the borders that everyone now calls countries will be erased into dust and ashes. Morality will turn into a myth, and all that will remain is the desire for survival. People will try to unite to defeat the enemy. There will be those very heroes who will decide to take risks to save humanity. However, Thomas believes that this will not work, and that people will eventually turn away from each other and succumb to the temptation to form associations just to achieve their own goals. A logical question arises: what to do, because people cannot just sit and wait with folded hands. This is exactly what Thomas is preparing for. He understands that the world will need a real hero during the apocalypse. Humanity needs a strong leader, not one who is afraid of public condemnation, reacts to bad articles in the newspapers, and comes to court summonses. The hero must show people something more. He must be arrogant and cruel when necessary. Now let's return to the Hwarang Guild, where the boss doesn't return home even during non-working hours. He reads the news about Thomas saving the country once again, and he clearly doesn't like it. He had long since sworn to take revenge on this guy, but so far he had not been able to carry out his cunning plan. He decided to use his secret weapon and started photographing some documents. Soon he got on the phone with the president of a large corporation, a man named Paco. It was to him that the photographs of the documents were sent, and if Martin does not fulfill Lisan's will, these documents will be destroyed. Lisan learns about Paco's relationship with the West, so he also wants to make useful connections. Another week passed after these events. It was time to go to America. Thomas is already at the airport with his comrades, among whom Manny stands out in particular, who is in a great mood. There is nothing strange about this, because he passed the association exam and managed to improve his rank. This guy is now a B rank. All this was made possible by constant training with the Necromancer. This required dying and being reborn several times within 1 week, but it was worth it. Thomas wished his friend good luck and told him not to go clearing the 4th-level dungeons alone under any circumstances. He also gave him a small gift, a marble ball of return, which is a valuable artifact. This ball will allow you to avoid danger at the moment when the hunter feels himself one step away from death. Manny feels incredibly supported by his boss and has never been happier. Mr. Chun just received an urgent call, and judging by his reaction, he learned something special. He received a call from the Ministry of Defense. Soldiers had spotted a terrorist group that wanted to destroy Thomas. All this sounds rather strange because he is an ordinary hunter who should not be of interest to anyone. Apparently, this guy forgot that he recently said that he would easily make enemies because he doesn't care about the consequences. Until the Ministry of Defense solves this problem, Thomas will not be able to board a plane. This happens even to a necromancer. He is lucky that another person has to go to America and offers to go with him on a private plane. At first, Thomas did not understand who this person was, but Mr. Chan knows very well who is in front of them. What kind of person is the head of the recognized largest guild and company in all of Korea? He is one of the 10 high-ranking hunters in the country. Before them is the very hero known throughout the country, a hunter named Martin. He offered Thomas to fly on a private jet. The Necromancer would gladly accept this offer if Martin is not afraid of terrorists. It looks like these guys are going to become friends, and something interesting could come out of this friendship. Another 20 hours passed after their first meeting, and they finally landed in America. Thomas immediately thanked his new friend for helping him cross the ocean. Apparently, they have already managed to become friends and have clearly established contact. It will be interesting to watch this in the future. Now it all looks a bit stupid, and some people are even ashamed to be around them. A few hours earlier, they had been having a great time in the media area of a private jet. Now it becomes more clear why these guys managed to become friends so quickly. As soon as Thomas left the airport, he was immediately met by Richard, who is a guide from the Titan Guild. His main goal is to deliver Thomas safely to the hotel, after which Thomas can meet his new friend Martin again. They immediately agreed to meet a little later and have fun again. Mr. Chan noted that his boss got along well with the famous hunter, although this did not happen often. Thomas believes that they are the same age, because he spent more than 2 decades on the planet Alphen. Those were hellish times. Perhaps Martin's life is not so different from Thomas's, and that is why it is so easy for them to communicate with each other. Martin also realized that his new comrade was not an ordinary guy, because he did not seem excited when he heard the story about the terrorists. Apparently, the Necromancer is incredibly confident in his abilities and strengths. Such confidence and calm cannot be due solely to the youthful spirit of maximalism. Martin became even more interested in this guy and now wants to get to know him as best as possible. In addition, they had similar tastes in TV series, and in these times this is very important. Later in the evening, Thomas finally made it to his hotel and earned the right to rest a little. Tomorrow there will be a general meeting of the guild, and in the morning a car will take Thomas and Mr. Chan to the meeting. Mr. Chan wanted to rest for a while, but after they shower, Thomas suggests they have a drink. This guy never stops. Even after a long flight, he is ready to get drunk, despite an important meeting the next day. Thomas is simply not used to resting, and this applies not only to the dungeons, but also to ordinary life. He was about to go out to meet his assistant and noticed that a laser was working in his room. At first, he thought it was just some new gadget in hotels, but then he realized that it was something much more dangerous. Right now, a huge missile is trying to destroy him, which is approaching his room at breakneck speed. After such an attack, it will not be easy to survive, but instead of running away, Thomas goes towards danger. He decided to collide with the missile in order to avoid innocent casualties throughout the hotel. It was a heroic act that almost cost him his life. Only with the help of the ghost armor skill, which used up all of his mana, did the Necromancer manage to survive the explosion. Some terrible people were ready to blow up an entire building to destroy Thomas, but they failed. The healing potion quickly restored the hunter's health, and he stood on his own 2 feet again. A terrorist attack right in the center of the city is pretty strange. Apparently there was no need to make extra enemies. Thomas decided to send his familiar to follow the helicopter to understand who exactly was fighting against him. By this time, the enemies had already managed to hide in the hope of remaining in the darkness and not being captured by cameras. Thomas already wants to look his enemies in the face and tear them to shreds. St. Marty just learned that Guild President Adril has arrived in America. Marty is very worried that no one will scare the immortal. She knows very well that it is better not to joke with this guy. She was quickly informed that he had been taken to a hotel room and was now fine. Marty constantly thinks about the ruthless and immortal Necromancer, whom she will have to meet tomorrow. She can no longer avoid meeting him, although, of course, because she did not go to meet him on her own initiative, Thomas may already be dissatisfied. It is unknown what their relationship was like in the past, but now it is clear that Marty is insanely afraid of Thomas. She called him sir and said that she had to meet him right now. At that moment, the doors of her room opened and very serious-minded people entered. This means that the Holy Knights of Aria have finally formed their own squad of paladins. General James Barnes is ready to carry out any of her orders. Within a few minutes, St. Mary was heading out to the city center, accompanied by security. She rides with the general of the paladin squad and looks very puzzled. This is the first time James sees her in this state. Before, Marty had never worried about anything. It was this woman who cured the general's daughter of her fatal illness, and now he will protect her no matter what. Soon the car stopped abruptly. The passengers were lucky that they were all wearing seatbelts. It turns out that there was an incomprehensible explosion ahead, and that is why everyone stopped. General James looked out the window and saw that the explosion had occurred right where the hotel they were heading to was located. This looks very much like a terrorist attack, and for Marty's safety it would be better to turn around and go home. The Holy Mayor did not understand that all this could end very sadly and said that it was necessary to immediately find out what was happening. James respects this woman very much, but he cannot carry out her order, because then she will be in danger. He will definitely inspect the area and tell us what happened, but now we need to return to the church. Meanwhile, a guy who was different from everyone else was walking around the city streets. This stranger was acting rather suspiciously, as if he was trying to find someone. Who knows? He has already been noticed, and now it will be more difficult for him to get into the enemy base. We need to catch this guy and find out from him who is behind the attack. At the last moment, the man in the hood sped up, and Thomas had to do the same as you to catch up with him. The Necromancer has incredible speed, but his opponent is not inferior to him in this regard. There was only one living creature like this guy. Lilu also had incredible speed. Thomas decided to activate his skills in order to close the gap. He was sure he had caught the guy, but at the last moment something very strange happened. This unknown person seemed to have teleported to another part of the road and again found himself too far away. Before us is the hunter Donald, who is at the 71st level of progress. With this level, he can easily become the best in the world. This guy is really talented. Already now, for a second, he disappeared somewhere. More than 10 years had passed since the last time Thomas experienced something like this. No one has provoked him for a long time, and now he is doubly interested in getting to this guy. They entered the metro station together and found themselves in deep darkness. Donald is sure that Thomas is mistaken in following him, because in fact it is the road to his own grave. For Donald, this is already his 100th hunt. He was born in Afghanistan, and when he was 10 years old, his father sold him to the rebels. Dad was overjoyed when he got a few dollars for this deal. When Donald saw his father's reaction, he turned into a monster who lost all feelings. The merciless war that never ended forced him to kill his enemies for survival. Now he understands that if necessary, he can cut out an entire army. He killed people and didn't even feel anything, because he understood that only murder would give him the opportunity to continue to exist. He was a hired killer and then awakened his hidden abilities. Now he is ready to commit another crime. Donald doesn't even suspect that he has never met such a dangerous creature as Thomas. Perhaps at first glance the Necromancer seemed like easy prey to him, but this was just an illusion. Thomas reacted to his attack in time and managed to block the blow of the ruthless killer. Within a second, he had caught the young man and shown him that experience makes all the difference. Donald managed to escape from the embrace of death and continued to attack without a single hesitation. After he awakened, no one could ever predict his attack. But this time, everything changed. Thomas senses the strength of his opponent, but this does not mean that he is afraid of Donald. Let's see how long this guy from Afghanistan can hold out. He considers himself very talented and strong, but a real necromancer is ready to show the difference in their levels. Meanwhile, Thomas disappeared and went down into the dungeon as if beckoning his rival to follow him. All this was nothing more than a trap in which the hired killer very quickly found himself. Soon the lights came on and he saw that he was surrounded by an army of skeletons from the world of the dead. The second round of tests will begin now. Let's see how well Donald performs. In such conditions, Thomas feels like a fish in water because he can call on a huge army of shadow soldiers for help. It turns out that his opponent also has hidden trump cards, such as the Divine Wrath skill. It is not often that you will see a hunter using the Berserker skill, which means that he has a dual warrior-assassin technique. This guy will be a pain in the ass. It's unlikely that ordinary skeletons will be able to stop him. After activating his skill, Donald became twice as fierce and began to destroy everything that stood in his way. He screamed clearly and promised that he would definitely kill Thomas and rip his heart out of his chest. Thomas didn't pay any attention to him at all, as if he felt that he was on a completely different level. Before the final attack, Donald was confident that his 100th hunt would be successful. The reality turned out to be completely opposite. In just a second, this guy was left without a head. It seemed impossible to him. Another guy caught in the trap of overconfidence. His soul will now be sealed in stone and will remain with the Necromancer forever. Soon the next day arrived and influential people gathered in the Titan Guild's interview hall. Mr. Chan looks very worried, while Martin, on the contrary, exudes calm and confidence. He is confident that Thomas will return soon because he is the best awakened warrior in Korea. This man can fight off missiles with his bare hands, but sometimes he can go crazy and even attack another country, which is what Chang is afraid of. It's time to go to the guild meeting even though Thomas is still missing. Today's meeting brought together a great many representatives from different countries. Kuhn addressed all the people gathered and said that they were needed to solve a global problem that was approaching. We need to gather all the awakened from all over the world to discuss the problem of the dungeon, namely the spatial gate. This gate connects the Earth and Alphen. The monsters that try to penetrate the human world are the inhabitants of the planet Alphen. It also became known that time in the dungeons flows 4 times slower than on the ground. It seems that the only salvation is a preemptive strike, that is, a strike ahead of time. People from the Earth must cross the bridge and destroy the monsters first if they want to survive, according to Saint Marty. There are many rumors about this woman, and finally she came out in person to meet everyone who had gathered here. She arrived from the planet Alphen to save the planet Earth and is ready to help people in every possible way. Not everyone is sure that they really have a priestess from another planet in front of them, because she looks like an ordinary awakened one. Marty had to confirm that her body was overflowing with power, and that she really was who she said she was. Together with the Order of Paladins, she is ready to pave the way to Alphen so that the earthly warriors can go there to clean up the territory. If people do not decide to take this step, then soon only ruins will remain on Earth, just like on Alphen. This war is needed to save both planets, and there is no other way out. After the disaster stops, people will be able to continue trading mana stones and earn big money from it. This is a great opportunity to kill 2 birds with 1 stone, but it won't be easy. Soon, the same immortal necromancer about whom there were so many rumors appeared at the meeting. Saint Marty immediately started squealing like a little girl waiting for her parents to come back from a school assembly and find out about her bad grades. Although Thomas looks completely different on the outside, she is sure that this is the same necromancer in front of her. Thomas said that it was awkward when she looked down on him, after which James immediately ordered him to immediately shut his mouth in front of the holy woman. Marty understands perfectly well that before her is a king who rules over an immortal army. A godlike warrior who sweeps away everything in his path, making even the strongest beings respect him. Everyone around considered Saint Marty to be a unique talent in the whole world. That's why everyone was surprised when she calmly knelt before the immortal. The only one who remained calm was Thomas, who just smiled and said that they hadn't seen each other for a long time. James refused to believe his own eyes and was sure that it was some kind of illusion. In fact, all this is happening for real. Thomas began to communicate in the language of Alphen and said that he understood that their extraterrestrial truce was over. Saint Marty replied that this was not so at all. If she had known that it was Adral, she would not have set foot there. She received an order from the goddess. She was told to bring a savior from planet Earth, and that's why she ended up here. After that, Thomas looked at the Titan Guild Master and said that they needed to have a serious talk. Thomas then approached reporters and told them to record his address. If we are talking about a hero who stopped a terrorist attack on a hotel, then people all over the world should see it. Thomas turned to all his enemies who were plotting to kill him and said that he would find each of them and grind them into dust. A direct war on terrorists has just been declared and nothing good will come of it. Only Chan looked happy. He saw that his boss was okay and finally calmed down. An excited Martin watched all this and said that he was now truly interested in his little brother. He turned to his assistant, Director Paco, and said that Thomas was indeed dangerous. Meanwhile, the gamer went to the office of the Titan Guild Master for a serious conversation. Marty asked Kun to give up her seat for the Monarch Adral, otherwise he might be offended. Thomas stated that everything was fine and that he could be treated more calmly now. She sat down only after Thomas personally allowed her to do so. Apparently, they had not heard of equality. At first, Kun started asking a lot of questions. He wants to understand what kind of relationship Thomas and Marty have and how they met. Thomas replied that they were friends, although of course Marty would never say that, because she respects the immortal too much. The Necromancer believes that there are much more important things that need to be discussed first. He opened a portal and took out the head of the dead guy who tried to destroy him yesterday. He asks the Titan Guild to find out the identity of the owner of this head and the people he's connected to. When Marty learned that someone was trying to destroy the monarch, she thought that the Earth had chosen the path of self-destruction. Marty will personally carry out this order in order to somehow make amends for her guilt before Thomas. Now Thomas wants to talk to the saint and express his dissatisfaction to her. She tries to take the best hunters and go with them to the planet Alphen, but if at that time the dungeons on Earth open, who will stop the monsters? In this case, people could be destroyed, and a special operation on another planet would be pointless. First, you need to learn about the spatial dimension and the fragment of space. At the same time, strange events were taking place in an unidentified military base located underground. Here they already learned that Donald had failed and that they needed to immediately move the base to another location. Professor Leola says that they are in the final stages of research and cannot leave this place. You need to spend at least a few hours to complete the final research and then you can leave this place. Bibi has been following these guys all this time. She was able to find them when she started following the helicopter. So she ended up in this dubious research department where everything is very interesting. Bibi noticed that there was a very strange glowing stone here. She had already seen something similar in her life when she went to the 6th level dungeon with her boss. In front of her was definitely a fragment of space. Meanwhile, the energy level of the bloodstone had exceeded the critical point. Leola wants to prove to the world that she is the greatest dungeon explorer. She wants to outshine Dr. Toppler. The indicators continued to grow and reached the 6th level. If this continues, nothing good will come of it. Energy can get out of control at any moment, and then total chaos will begin. It seems that before our very eyes, the research is not going according to plan, and scientists are starting to panic. Soon there was a huge release of energy, which was noticeable even from the other part of the country. Most of the people in the laboratory died immediately on the spot. A strange creature appeared here, smiling and saying that he really liked it here. At this moment, Bibi came out of her safe location and decided to attack the unknown creature. They seemed to know each other and give off a very familiar energy. Meanwhile, the conversation in the Titan Guild's main office had been going on for several hours. Marty began to talk about spatial dimensions and a fragment of space. The spatial dimension is a kind of special space in the upper dimension, and Thomas has been there before. Dungeons are like the entrance door to other worlds, with many dungeons connected to one-dimensional participants like the tentacles of an octopus. Dungeon splits are a synchronization process. Monsters cannot show their full power if they do not have enough mana, so they split the dungeons to spread the dungeon's energy using mana crystals. Monsters transform the earth into their habitat and literally change the climate conditions. There is only one way to stop this process, because all the dungeons and dimensions are under the control of the ruler of the dimensions, who sends monsters here. It seems that Thomas has a good understanding of who is the ruler of the dimensions. The invader Tranet and his 72 warlords are the representatives of the Lord, and besides them there are also lords of a lower level. At the moment, they are expanding their power through war, in which everyone is trying to win back their own territory. The plan is to gain the title of Dimensional Ruler and confront the rivals on equal terms. This will help restore all the dungeons on Earth and Alphen and finally solve all the problems. It sounds really exciting. You need to take all the lands from your opponent and leave them empty-handed. After this, Thomas will be able to calmly destroy the warriors of Tranet, whom he hates the most. Now we need to figure out how exactly to get all these spatial lands. In order to implement the plan, you need to find a stone called a fragment of space. It turned out that Thomas had been holding it in his pocket all this time and had only just now shown it to St. Mary. The fragment of space should point to a dungeon that reacts to its energy. In total, you need to find 3 such fragments in order to complete the entire main plan. Thomas saw that St. Marty was reacting very strangely and guessed that she also had similar fragments. He got one of the fragments from her, now he needs to find another one. At that moment, the goblin returned from his mission and said that they had lost the hallucination witch. The necromancer cannot believe that Bibi was destroyed. He does not want to know who dared to do this. It turned out that one of Tranit's pawns, Rushmod, was already on the ground. Thomas said that he needed to end this conversation immediately in order to take revenge on the guy who carried out the terrorist attack on him. Thomas ordered St. Mary to immediately gather her in the previous detachment and follow him. Thanks to the goblin, they quickly found the location of the terrible creature. Not only is there a necromancer here, but also a squad of paladins along with the leader of the Titan Guild. Kun is very worried. He would like to help Thomas in this difficult matter, but the necromancer wants to act alone. An immortal warrior is obliged to destroy his opponent. If something goes wrong, the paladins will be ready to intervene. Thomas ordered them to stay back and await further instructions, and he himself entered the abandoned house and saw a portal. A second later, a loud laugh was heard from the creature holding the black cat in its arms. Rushmod can't believe that the great necromancer fled from Alphen to some wretched land. This demon has already died several times at the hands of Thomas, and it seems that he wants to do it again. This guy is probably so old that he has dementia and doesn't remember anything. It's finally time to have a proper sparring session and see how strong the necromancer is after his rebirth. They are about to go into the portal, and at the end Thomas asked no one to interfere. He must destroy the enemy himself. St. Marty just learned that the necromancer does not have the full power he had in the past. Now he will have to make up for lost time and progress in order to regain his former greatness. He used to be so all-powerful that even great warriors feared him, so this news upsets Marty. Now she understands that fighting Rushmod is too dangerous and completely reckless. To do this, you need to have at least Death Knights. But Thomas only has regular skeletons in his arsenal. However, he does not lose his self-confidence and is confident that he will do everything in the best possible way. The necromancer was about to enter the portal, but at that moment there was an incredible burst of energy. Before the eyes of the entire team, the dungeon split and huge and terrifying monsters burst out from there. The release of energy does not stop at all. It looks like we will have to destroy an entire army of monsters. In order to go and save Bibi, you need to take care of the monsters. And for this, Thomas is forced to call Rocky for help. This huge familiar called to its aid all the military equipment that was in the area. Thanks to this, he turned into a real transformer who was ready to challenge anyone. If the monsters thought they would have an easy ride on Earth, they were very naive. Until this point, St. Marty believed that the immortal had lost most of his power. Now she no longer believes in these tales because she sees what the necromancer is capable of. At the same time, Thomas entered the warlock Rushmod's research lab and activated attack mode. All this is different from what he saw in ordinary dungeons. Everything here is completely different. Rushmod looks very confident because he has modified his body through research on the Chimera. Bibi is still alive, but that doesn't mean Thomas will get her back safe and sound. With the help of his skills, the demon killed Bibi. She will be able to restore her health only within a month. Thomas will not forgive anyone for the destruction of his familiars. His inner rage has reached its limit. Now he is being attacked by a very dangerous and insidious opponent, but all this plays into the necromancer's hands. Thomas did everything possible to make his opponent immediately feel that this battle would be too difficult for him. After receiving the warrior class, Thomas discovered various abilities and hidden characteristics that he had never even suspected before. With the help of the warrior's rage technique, he will gradually increase his strength until he reaches the limit. His weapon constantly changes its appearance, making it too difficult for the opponent to adapt to the battle. From the very first seconds of the battle, Rushmod felt like a helpless kitten in the teeth of an experienced tiger. Thomas didn't even think about slowing down. On the contrary, he constantly progressed and increased the pressure. His attacks were merciless, although, as stated earlier, he still had not regained his former power. The skill used time and glass, and now the warrior's rage will be deactivated. This time was enough to destroy the demon, but there is no doubt that they will meet again. Thomas relaxed and calmly walked towards the exit of the dungeon, but it was a mistake. It turned out that at this moment, Rushmod very quickly restored his health, although before it took him much more time. Regeneration has reached a new level, which means that the demon has passed a new stage of evolution. Now he is much more dangerous and can even summon his own soldiers to attack his opponents. It all looks like a shadow army, only instead of the dead there are monsters who are ready to tear Thomas apart. Meanwhile, Rocky continued to clear the area and did everything possible to ensure that the paladins did not interfere with the process. With such firepower, Rocky can be truly confident that he can take out all his enemies on his own. Unfortunately, even this big guy has his own mana limit, and sooner or later he may start having problems. St. Marty is more concerned about the Necromancer who has been fighting in the dungeon for too long. She doesn't understand how Thomas wants to destroy Rushmod alone, because he doesn't have a full-fledged shadow army. Thomas managed to defeat the monsters, but now he looks too tired. Even if he manages to injure the demon again, this guy from another world will be able to restore his body again. Thomas decided to talk a little in order to regain his strength and then use the skill. He doesn't have any high-level soldiers, but the skeletons are always ready to come to the aid of their master. Due to the large number of soldiers, one can count on them being able to help in this difficult battle. Thomas put too much mana into Rocky, so it took time to replenish his mana reserves and regain his power. He's still a necromancer, and this guy should never be underestimated. The battle continued with renewed vigor, as if both sides of the conflict had been injected with mana. Now Rushmod doesn't look as confident as he used to, but Thomas isn't immortal either. Due to the wasted energy in his current state, he won't be able to win. It seems like it's time to use other skills. Thomas felt that Rocky had already managed to kill almost all the monsters. He realized that there was an opportunity to take some energy from his familiar and become stronger thanks to it. As soon as this happened, all of his stats were increased and he was able to land a critical hit. Rushmod can quickly regenerate his body, but a hammer blow to the head will still leave a lasting impression on him from this battle. After that, Thomas turned the hammer into a huge axe to deliver another blow and put a fat point. Now the demon is left without a head, and it is unlikely that his regeneration will be able to cope with everything. Although he can still talk, he is hardly such a dangerous opponent anymore. Thomas is not going to run away anywhere. He understands that his enemies have become stronger, but at the same time he calmly accepts their challenge. Today, not only the Necromancer, but also his powerful familiar did a wonderful job. Thomas came out of the dungeon and apologized to Rocky for taking some of his energy at the last moment. Even if the familiar dies, it will not disappear, but until it is resurrected, it will wander unconsciously in the endless void. Rocky has lost too much strength and has received too many injuries. He must return to the world of the dead and take care of Bibi. Soon they will be able to recover and will come to the aid of their owner again. Rushmod appeared outside the metro station, although the ground was not yet fully synchronized. The demon appeared in a place that could be called a summoning circle, and it was quite strange. Someone from the Earth used a fragment of space. They tried to call the dungeon, and it brought the demon to this planet. Thomas won't let anyone just come into the house of humanity and destroy everyone around them. He demands that Marty help him stop the forces of evil and obtain the spatial dimension. This guy intends to save not only humanity, but also the planet Alphen. Now there is no doubt that it was about him that the prophecies were said. Marty will do everything possible to help the immortal achieve his goals. After the unsuccessful fight with Rushmod, Thomas focused on leveling up in high-ranking dungeons. He has entered into an alliance with the Titan Guild, and they are already considering the details of land defense and an expedition to Alphen. After the guild meeting, conclusions were drawn, and the whole world was thrown into confusion. The Earth has been put at risk by the mining and use of mana stones. This not only gave hunters the opportunity to earn big money, but also was a danger to all of humanity. The world is divided into two sides. Some believe that we need to stop going into dungeons, while others are sure that we need to strengthen our defenses through active raids. Now the world needs a unified defense system, and so it was decided to assemble a team to lead a worldwide organization of awakened ones. A month later, it was finally time to return to our homeland and say goodbye to the American representatives. They will meet on Alphen, but for now Thomas has business in his native Korea. Marty went to the church to talk to the goddess and tell her that she would soon be returning home. While praying, Marty hears the goddess, and Aria's revelation is happening right now. The goddess asked her follower to follow the Necromancer and trust him. Apparently, Marty is a little upset, but she has no choice but to trust Thomas. By that time, the immortal Necromancer had returned home, where he is an even greater celebrity than in America. He heads to his guild office and can't wait to receive new quests. It seems that there was a conflict in the car. Thomas was offered dinner with the president and he immediately refused. The Necromancer said that he was not hungry at all, although of course the president did not call him just to eat like a pig. Thomas said Chan is the vice president and can attend meetings in his place. After that, he ordered the car to stop and said that he would get home on his own and also sent his regards to the president. Mr. Chan is once again forced to handle all the important matters on his own, and his job is not to be envied. After he became vice president, his life became several times more complicated. Changes in his psyche are already noticeable. Sometimes he starts laughing furiously as if he were a fan of the movie Joker. Thomas went by taxi and promised his mother that he would have dinner with her that evening. He was supposed to pay the taxi driver, but it turned out that the Necromancer had forgotten his wallet in another car. I had to call my old friend and ask him for some money. Mark didn't expect at all that after Thomas became a famous person, he would still continue to ask him for money. This guy hasn't changed at all. He's become a rich man and still can't pay for his own taxi. Mark told his sister that he was going to meet Thomas, at which point her expression immediately changed. A few minutes later, a meeting took place at the nearest coffee shop. Instead of Mark, his sister Nuna came here. There is nothing surprising about this. She said that she quit her job at the factory, and they even wrote about it in the newspapers, because now everyone calls Nuna the Necromancer's girlfriend. Now she should get used to popularity, because the more famous Thomas is, the more interest there will be in her person. She always dreamed of becoming a writer, and now she has finally started trying to take steps in that direction. Nuna wrote about a high school student who had a portal to an unknown dungeon appear under his feet. Because of this portal, the main character ended up in another world and faced dangers. He went through all the difficulties and became an expert, which allowed him to finally find a way to return back home. When the main character returned to Earth, the world was already completely different. Humanity was subject to monsters. Nuna was thinking about Thomas when she wrote her novel, and that's why everything turned out so similar. Many people like this novel and demand a sequel, so the author decided to thank Thomas. She believes that it was thanks to him that she was finally able to realize her dream and become a writer. Thomas believes that it was her character that made everything work for her, and he only played a secondary role. Nuna is a woman brave enough to deserve the best. Meanwhile, many new employees appeared in the Adral Guild, and the office turned into a small anthill. The boss finally returned here and happily noticed that everything had changed here completely. Some employees were extremely surprised to see a living star. Previously, they had only seen Thomas on magazine covers. You also need to say hello to another employee who has recently joined the service. Jennifer may no longer wear a soldier's uniform, but that doesn't mean she's lost her incredible level of discipline and dedication. The lieutenant transferred to the reserve unit and began working in the guild yesterday. Thomas immediately invited her into his office for a little chat. During this time, her level has increased slightly, but her characteristics have remained the same. It will be very difficult for her to develop her skills due to her weak rank, but nothing is impossible. Jennifer has already increased her level by 3 levels, which means that she has quite good potential. Thomas suggests that she take some enhancement stones in order to absorb mana into her body. Thanks to these stones, her level will increase. All that remains is to supplement it with combat experience. Thomas also decided to give the girl a book of skills so that she could learn telepathy and other useful techniques. During this time, he has accumulated a lot of different books that can help her achieve higher results. It will take a lot of time to read them, but it's worth it. At that moment, Manny ran into the office, who had already managed to become even more massive since their last meeting. Apparently, he is puzzled by something and wants to show his boss a live broadcast. South Korea just signed defense contracts with the Adral Guild. Mr. Chang took too much to heart the words that he was the vice president and could do whatever he wanted. He has moved away from his core strategy and is now contracting with the government. Now the guild will have great support from the state, and it can be said with confidence that this agreement is very useful. On the other hand, the guild is now responsible for ensuring national security. The Adral Guild can be considered a national army, and the boss doesn't like this nuance at all. In simple terms, now most of their lives will be spent in the army, as if they were ordinary soldiers. Mr. Chan acted too recklessly, and now Thomas will be forced to meet with important Korean representatives on his own. Sometimes it happens. You tell a guy to go to dinner, and he signs a defense contract with the president. Thomas got angry and said that he would personally talk to Mr. Chan, but in the meantime he needed to go to training camp. He will go to the nearest dungeon and take Manny with him along with Jennifer. By that time, the meeting with government representatives had ended, and Chan went to the office. His driver is a member of the presidential committee, Pak, who told him a lot. Chan just learned that they will soon have to move their office to another location. Now the Adral Guild is protecting the entire country, and they will need a bigger place. Chan laughed nervously and said that they hadn't signed the contract yet and needed the boss's confirmation. He called the guild, where he was told that Thomas had already gone to the dungeon and could not take the call. Paul was very unhappy with what had happened, and immediately informed his friend that he had made a terrible deal. No one understands how an event occurred that forces them to defend the Republic of Korea. Chan didn't even suspect that all of this was broadcast live and the entire country saw the events. In fact, it all started with an innocent dinner, and the president said that he wanted to improve the Adral Guild. He said that they needed to make the guild into an organization called the Korea Defense Guild and keep Thomas from doing anything reckless. After dinner, negotiations were held. The government promised to provide support if Chang could persuade his boss. The press conference was supposed to be private, but the whole thing was recorded on camera before Thomas's agreement was even received. The government wanted to show this to the public in order to gain the approval of the Necromancer, but this is impossible because he is a man who does not care about public opinion. When Thomas finds out what happened, he will turn the entire presidential house upside down and not even blink an eye. Chan must prevent this conflict if he wants to continue living and working in Korea. He will have to find a way out of the impasse. Meanwhile, inside the 6th-level dungeon, there were hunters of different ranks. Here you can meet an experienced necromancer as well as rather weak and inexperienced assistants. During this time, Manny has managed to gain experience, so compared to Jennifer, he looks like a real lion in the jungle. Jennifer was sure that they had entered the wrong dungeon and should have gone to a much safer place. Thomas had long since entered the danger zone and began clearing the areas on his own. Manny decided to support his partner and gave her a dagger to give her confidence. Together they will definitely succeed. They just need to do the dirty work after their boss. Collecting mana stones shouldn't be too difficult. The problem here is that cutting monsters is a very specific process. This type of work takes some getting used to. Judging by what Jennifer sees, her partner is a real professional in mining mana stones. You need to catch up with the boss, and to do this, you can't waste a minute and constantly push each other. Jennifer tries to learn quickly and use her soldier experience, but so far everything is too difficult. It's hard for her to even imagine how quickly the guild president can hunt. Taking a few steps forward, Jennifer noticed that the eyes of monsters were looking at her from the darkness. Her partner was not afraid at all because he understood that this meant the boss was returning. These eyes did not belong to terrible monsters at all, but to the shadow soldiers of the Necromancer. Thomas was unhappy that his assistants had not finished yet, although it was already time to return home. Now, Lieutenant Jennifer finally understood how the boss quickly defends the dungeons, because he has an army of skeletons. After a few minutes, they finally entered the dungeon and saw that it was much nicer to be here than at the metro station. Thomas called his assistants to him and said that he now wanted to introduce them to someone. First of all, he turned to Jennifer and said that she should try to tame one small animal. The girl thought she would have to tame a kitten, but instead she met a saber-toothed tiger. It goes without saying that the tiger is 5 times more level than Jennifer, and just the sight of it is enough for her to write a suicide note. No one asks Jennifer to fight, just try to talk to the monster. It feels like it's a very easy process, or Thomas has completely lost his mind and decided to destroy his assistants. Manny must make sure that the monster does not cause any problems and does not hurt anyone. Manny immediately felt the incredible power of this tiger, but did not deviate from his plans. If he received an order from the boss, he will definitely carry it out, even if it means going through hardships. The monster felt weak and decided to attack the small and defenseless man. The saber-toothed tiger is confident that it is on its territory, but it is unlikely to be able to bite through steel flesh. The steel fist strike is one of the techniques the hunter has mastered over the past few weeks. He has many new tricks in his arsenal, and now he happily shows them off during battle. The battle against the monster lasted no more than a minute and ended with Manny's decisive victory. Jennifer had already heard that this guy was a B rank, but she had no idea that he was so dangerous. The hunter looked rather weak, but now it turned out that he was a real king of beasts. It is necessary to try to tame it, but the monster tries to snap and resist until the very end. I had to show him who was boss and finally make this guy shut up. At first, Jennifer didn't want to interfere with this process, but then the boss gave her an extra supply of mana. He is confident that she will succeed. She just needs to pretend that Jennifer is the tiger's friend. To do this, there will be a small performance. Manny will pretend that he is attacking not only the tiger, but also Jennifer. The girl will have to defend herself and play her role, showing that she is protecting the animal. Jennifer instantly approached and prepared to show martial arts. She studied close combat techniques during her many years in the army. Her blow was truly powerful, and even she herself did not expect anything like this from herself. The saber-toothed tiger was shocked and fell in love with this woman once and for all. Now she has completely tamed him and can be sure that he will save her in a crisis situation. Time passes very quickly in the dungeon, so I had to worry about making a fire. In the evening, heartfelt conversations usually begin, especially if you are near a large fire. Manny finally decided to open up about how he's not very happy with his role on the team. He dreamed of something more, but ended up doing only small tasks for his boss. The boss reassured his partner and said that he takes him very seriously and is confident that sooner or later Manny will become a real leader when Thomas retires. To do this, you will have to learn advanced fire magic, which has high requirements. To learn such a technique, one must increase one's level, and this is exactly what the hunter should focus on now. After such motivation, Manny did not hide his joy and said that now he will stop at nothing on the way to the top. At the same time, in the Adral Guild, the lights were still on in the office, and Mr. Chung was still at his workstation. He tried to figure out what he needed to do and how to convince Thomas and do it in a way that would not cause a fight. Soon the boss finally returned, and it was immediately clear that he was very unhappy. Chan felt like a little boy about to get a few spanks on the butt. They went to the boss's office to have a serious talk and discuss the current situation. Chan said that everything shown on TV was a lie, and the real contract had not yet been signed. The government offered a good deal and very favorable conditions just to prevent Thomas from moving abroad. Some countries are already putting pressure on the Korean government to gain support for the Necromancer. The problem is not the conditions at all. The guild was created so that Thomas would not serve in the army. If he wanted to become a soldier, he could easily join the Hammer Guild or any other organization. The Necromancer does not want to work for anyone at all, and if someone tries to blackmail him, he will not forgive it. Already he wants Chan to call the reporters gathered on the street. A few seconds later, an unexpected press conference took place in the guild office. The immortal Necromancer personally came out to meet with journalists. He said that they are not going to apologize to anyone and will tell how everything really happened. Chang hoped that the problem would be resolved peacefully, and he had never been so wrong. The agreement shown on TV was never signed. Thomas is upset about this terrible act by the President and the Secretary of Defense. This means that the government is lying to its citizens just to put pressure on the guild. Thomas called for all this false news to be forgotten and even stated that after this he was obliged to emigrate. If anyone from the government decides to contact him, he will immediately leave the country without a shadow of a doubt. At the most interesting moment, the press conference ended. Journalists did not have time to ask their questions. It is already becoming clear that a war with public opinion is coming. In fact, there is nothing to fear, even if the opponent is the Korean government itself. After a while, the media and the internet went crazy. The agreement that was talked about so much was not signed. It was all just a fake to put pressure on Thomas. The Adral Guild prepared for the approaching disaster. In order to expand their scope, they accepted New Awakened. The recent news has created a lot of excitement, and the number of applications has been abnormal. Already today, more than 1,000 hunters have sent in an application to join the Adral Guild, but the problem is that there are too many weaklings among them. High-ranking hunters are already members of other guilds, and if there are any free guys among them, they don't want to burden themselves with any contracts. In fact, even low-ranking hunters can be invited to your team because they can progress like Jennifer and Manny. Together with the Necromancer, each hunter has a chance to become stronger and thus move the guild to the top of the iceberg. By that time, Thomas had managed to reach level 70 in one of the dungeons. Finally, the time had come to use the very skill he had long dreamed of. It was because of this technique that in the past he was able to control an army of thousands and become a living legend. Even now, he can feel the same energy that comes from the Death Knights in the summoning room. Before this, we need to release another soldier who will be able to carry out personal assignments. Now the soul of the man who previously tried to kill our main character will be freed. This guy demonstrated courage and good potential, thus earning the opportunity to rise from the dead and serve a new ruler. As soon as Donald returned to the real world, he immediately began to attack Thomas. This madman stopped only at the last moment because his boss gave such an order. Now Donald cannot move. He is completely at the mercy of the Necromancer and must accept this as an indisputable fact. Donald can get his second chance and destroy enemies like in the old days. He just needs to swear to serve the Necromancer faithfully. At first he refused to do this. He needed to calm down and understand that otherwise he would return to the kingdom of the dead. It was with this dagger that he tried to kill the Necromancer. Now this dagger can send him into eternal darkness. It had to happen sooner or later. Donald obeyed and quickly acquired a new form. At first this guy had no intention of bowing before the Lord and pretended that he was very cool. It was necessary to call for help another familiar who forced Donald to kneel before the immortal king. Donald hadn't called on Kiba for help for a long time, and yet this guy used to carry out his most important assignments. Kiba is one monster you don't want to mess with, not because he doesn't understand jokes, but because he only understands the language of force. Now we need to send the recruit to full-fledged training so that he can improve his level. Thomas has reopened the ability to summon Death Knights, making hunting much easier. Death Knights are creatures that are capable of independently controlling an army, that is, commanding skeletons even when Thomas is not around. Skeletons can also move into the summoning room with Death Knights, meaning the army is almost complete. By this time, Bibi had already returned from the world of the dead, and it seems she was unhappy that her master did not save her. She also dreams of becoming much stronger and showing the demon from the other world that she is much more than an ordinary cat. Her soul was suppressed after her resurrection, but now her former energy has returned. By this time, Manny had already learned new flame skills and also become much more dangerous. He will have a lot of explaining to do because he still doesn't know who Bibi is. All this time, this guy was playing with her and thought that she was an ordinary cat, and now they tell him that the cat turned into a human. All the bloodstones in the dungeon were collected. For this, Manny gathered a few weaklings for support. The remaining monsters can be cleared out by this guy because he can't wait to show his skills to the boss. If you look closely, you can see that it is better not to rush with fire attacks, because there is a person near the mutant crows. Jennifer is also learning new skills and feels much more confident. Her level almost doubled after she became the master of a saber-toothed tiger. Her tamer class is ideal for controlling and luring enemy monsters to her side. After just a few dungeons, Jennifer has made incredible progress, and it's hard to believe. Thomas is glad that his assistants are evolving so quickly. He understands that a storm is coming and he needs to be fully prepared. First, he needs to get rid of the forces that tried to kill him at the hotel, and to do that, he'll have to contact the Titan Guild. Kun is always in touch with his Korean friend. Today they will talk about Donald. This guy was a very famous killer, but he was an independent mercenary who did most of his work in Afghanistan. The Titan Guild couldn't find out who was behind this, but it seems Thomas figured it out even without investigating. All this was not difficult to find out, because it was possible to ask Donald directly and track all his organizations and all his clients. The Titan Guild will definitely want to catch the terrorists behind all these attacks. The time has come for revenge, and it must be done as cruelly and uncompromisingly as possible. Now absolutely everyone and their dog is talking about the hunter who is called a Necromancer. His guild is accepting applications from other countries, which means that Korea will soon become a gathering place for high-ranking warriors. Lee-san still dreams of taking revenge on his enemy and can't believe that he is called the best in his field. It was he who organized the contract killing of Thomas and lost a lot of money on it without getting the desired result. In addition, Chairman Paco cut off ties with Lee-san, and now the status of the Hwarang Guild continues to decline. It started after the disappearance of the hunter Lilu, and now the rate of decline is only accelerated. The guildmaster wants revenge, and now he will have a great opportunity. He heard a strange voice calling him to avenge his sister. An unknown creature appeared before him and promised to lend its energy to the master. To do this, you just need to go to the dungeon where his younger sister died. After this, the ghost disappeared and only said that he would wait for a new meeting. After Lee-san's disappearance, he found a mysterious sword on his floor that he definitely didn't leave there. Upon closer inspection, he discovered that the sword belonged to his younger sister, although the weapon was supposed to remain in the dungeon. If he can actually gain the power to avenge his sister, then that would be perfect. Meanwhile, in America, Kun was thinking about what tasks needed to be solved first. The Adral Guild asked him to identify the terrorists and get rid of them, but he failed to complete his task. Now Thomas has asked to take on the task of transporting soldiers to Central Asia and stabilizing the territory that will remain after the terrorists are dealt with. Guild will provide transportation. The U.S. military is already located in that territory and is conducting a special operation. The key moment in the near future is a joint operation with the Adral Guild. Now, Kun and his team must follow Thomas's orders, or they will face public criticism from all sides if they fail. It sounds pretty weird that a guild from Korea is dealing with terrorism in America, but that's the reality. St. Marty came to have a serious talk and said that she wants to follow Thomas and leave the Titan Guild. It was clear that she had not only made such a decision, but that she had no choice because she was following the prophecy of the goddess. Kun is confused because her blessing and divination skills have brought great benefits to the guild and the entire country. Marty created a squad of paladins and united with the Holy Knights to liberate Alphen. Letting her go now is not easy at all. The Titan Guild will suffer greatly and will not be able to prevent the coming disasters. The saint thanked her friend for his help and explained that she could not go against the prophecy. Kun allowed her to lead the order of paladins because they were gathered to serve her. The guild still remains indebted to Marty and will definitely continue to support the Order of Arya. Kun understands perfectly well that he must maintain contact with this woman no matter what. At the same time, on another continent, there was a man who had lost his mind because of the desire for revenge. He desperately wants to gain power and finally kill the man who ruined his life. Right now, Lee-san came across a monument to a hero who prevented a disaster in one of the cities of Korea. This monument belongs to a necromancer, and the guild master is sure that this architecture must be destroyed. The security guard at that place started yelling at the guy and ordered him to stop immediately. Everything indicates that Lisan has already received incredible power from an unknown creature, and now it will be difficult to stop him. Another guard saw what was happening and immediately informed his assistant that reinforcements needed to be called. His radio was instantly destroyed by just one glance from the dangerous monster. Now before us is no longer an ordinary person, but a creature whose mind is completely eclipsed by revenge. He will no longer allow anyone to look down on him and will make everyone respect him. The guards were not guilty of anything, but due to a combination of circumstances, they were forced to say goodbye to their lives. After this, Lisan found himself in a dungeon, although even he himself did not understand how this happened. Finally, his mind cleared and he remembered that he had somehow killed 2 innocent people. It's too late to look back. First, we need to deal with the dungeon and then get out of here. The demon appeared again in the darkness and said that he would give the man incredible powers if he accepted his offer. Lisan will get absolutely all the opportunities to turn into a super warrior. Just go into the dungeon. This is exactly what he wanted so badly, so it is unlikely that this guy will refuse such a tempting offer. He walked inside the portal and found himself in a very cold place. We need to find that very demon with whom he was talking while sitting in his office. Lisan feels a rather strange feeling. All the monsters he met along the way didn't even attack him. Probably the one who invited him here is the owner of the dungeon and a very influential figure. Soon the experienced master reached the castle and entered the main room, where the boss was already waiting for him. Right now, in front of him is the king of this place, a mysterious creature from the other world. The master immediately fell to his knees and felt a monstrous flow of energy approaching him. The boss welcomed him to his dimension, but it was clear that if Lisan said even one wrong word, he would be immediately destroyed. Thomas didn't even suspect about all these events. He lived a completely different life and different problems. It's time to go to Afghanistan, and the plane is now boarding. Today is the time to meet Saint Marty. It seems Thomas is not very happy about it. The saint, on the contrary, is happy and says that she came to be constantly nearby. Apparently, her presence is not very pleasing to the Death Knights, who sense this terrible woman. Her presence has caused the summoning room to fill with a foul odor, so the Death Knights ask the boss to destroy Marty. He asked them to shut up because it was time to have a serious talk with his interlocutor. Thomas said that they were not going to play Arya's games and did not allow anyone to approach him. If he notices even a spark of holy energy that he didn't ask for, the Death Knights will quickly deal with it. All that's left for Marty to do is ask the goddess to take care of her and not let her die on this terrible trip. There is a military base in Bagram in Afghanistan, where many soldiers have already gathered. 2 days after Thomas's team arrived at the site, a meeting was held at the operations headquarters. Based on the testimony of the Necromancer and other supporting documents, the man in the photograph was previously a businessman and then became a terrorist. This is the classic path for every self-respecting citizen. First make money and then start blowing up everything around. The rebels and the government are involved in arms sales, and their negotiating point is located near this headquarters. We just need to get some information and understand who ordered the murder. The main thing is to prevent the suspect from escaping with key evidence or to get rid of it completely. Commander David Morgan is not very happy about having to work with the hunter, but he hopes for honest cooperation. Thomas is confident that he can observe the terrorists without letting them notice him. To do this, you just need to lure the object into its field of vision, and then it will obtain all available information. The commander had no choice but to agree to these conditions because it would make the work of his team easier. A few more days passed, and our main character found himself in Pakistan. He will have to work alongside a senior U.S. intelligence officer, Rachel Park, who is here for the first time today and is very nervous. Thomas asked her to relax a little and imagine that they were on a tourist holiday. This will not be easy to do, especially considering that the infrastructure here is not the most pleasant. For Thomas, this place seems beautiful because after the destruction of Alphen, everything around him seems beautiful. There was a major bombing here recently, so the areas were completely destroyed. Returning to the battlefield makes Thomas feel memories of the glory days spent on Alphen. This guy lived for battle and will always remember this time with admiration. Soon they arrived at their destination. Rachel asked Thomas to avoid actions that would cause a stir. You need to minimize the attention of others and not attract unnecessary glances. They are here today to keep an eye on the terrorist. The man in the blue shirt is very close and doesn't even pay attention to this sweet couple. While there is still time, Thomas must install a tracking device on the target. Actually, Thomas has already done this a long time ago, and now he asks Rachel to finally leave this cheap restaurant. All this becomes possible through the use of the summoning of shadow followers. The Necromancer has become a professional in his own skills and now amazes those around him even more. In any case, it is in a place that looks much better than Alphen. Local children approached him and began to speak in an incomprehensible language. They are probably begging him for money. These children have lost their guardians. Now it is very difficult for them to survive. Thomas is not greedy and is ready to share easy money with these little worms. He noticed a very bright girl, whom you wouldn't expect to see in such a dim place. The Necromancer had a rare chance to see a child with such a radiant and energetic soul. Soon a small child approached Thomas and greeted him as if they were strangers. The girl asked for some money and Thomas could not refuse her. A second later, he deeply regretted having committed this reckless act because the girl turned out to be truly explosive. The ghost armor was activated in time and managed to save the Necromancer from a terrible death. He really had lost his grip, and it hadn't been that long since he had returned to Earth. Rachel immediately ran to him to make sure Thomas was okay. Just now, 7 other explosions happened simultaneously. All of it was a planned action. This means that 7 more children died, and there is a high probability that the explosions also killed other people in the area. This lawlessness must stop. Terrorists can no longer take the lives of innocent people. To use such young creatures as suicide bombers is absolutely against all laws of nature. Thomas hasn't felt so much rage in himself in a long time. The terrorists can be sure that he will find and finish off each of them. Another week has passed since the terrorist attack, and the special operation is still not complete. The hostages are being transported without even knowing where they are. Under one of the masks hides an immortal necromancer, judging by his face. This is all part of the plan. A week earlier, the commander was shocked to learn of terrorist attacks throughout the city. Thomas said that soldiers are not required to participate in the special operation. He wants to do everything himself. He's cleared dungeons on his own before, and now he wants to do it again. It will be difficult to distinguish between ordinary civilians and rebels. Does Thomas really intend to destroy everyone who gets in his way? The awakened Colonel Roger noticed Thomas's keen desire to become the most dangerous and brutal terrorist among all the locals. If Thomas plans to mindlessly invade terrorist territory, then their leader will easily escape. These words make sense. We need to calm down and try to solve the problem as a team. Thomas tried to pull himself together, but he was not going to listen to any more of this nonsense. He wants to entrust this task only to himself and not be dependent on other individuals. Roger can't ignore this. Apparently he really wants to help. He even has a plan on how to carry out this mission. Instead of a frontal attack, he suggests starting with killing the rebel commander. This is where it should have started. The Necromancer from Soul Station always liked such strategies. Roman Baker is a black market arms dealer and the only one who can stop terrorism from being defeated. The rebels are planning to take him prisoner soon, and Thomas needs to follow them. This will most likely allow Thomas to enter the rebel base without any problems. Very soon he found himself in an unknown place where he was locked up with other prisoners. Everything went without any unnecessary incidents, and now you can ask the Shadow Goblin for help. You just need to request a body swap, and then the goblin will find himself in the body of his master. Of course, Thomas doesn't want to switch bodies with a goblin, but now he has no choice. Thanks to this, he can leave the confined space and get out into freedom to implement his plan. He analyzed the situation and very quickly found the leader of the rebels. Terrorists force their hostages to bow to God and sacrifice themselves. If you look closely, you can see that there are not many more terrorists than their hostages, but they are seriously armed. Countless souls have perished in this desert, and the Necromancer feels them all crying and still feeling pain. Thomas decided not to be afraid and honestly tell the terrorists what he thought of them. He instantly broke the shackles and freed himself from those unpleasant ropes on his hands and feet. Everything happened so quickly that the terrorists didn't even understand how the awakened one ended up there. These guys pulled out their machine guns and thought they were going to shoot this guy to pieces. This trash is not even worthy of a necromancer's attention. Too many souls have perished in this desert who did not deserve such a terrible fate. With his skills, Thomas can bring these souls back to the real world and give them the opportunity to avenge injustice. The terrorists immediately began to panic and began to run away from their own death. They tried to shoot at the skeletons, but these guys didn't care about the bullets flying at their heads. The terrorists returned to their base and tried to quickly close the gates to prevent their opponents from getting inside. It's unlikely that they'll be able to defend themselves against Ramzan. This guy is ready to break through any defense. He is the 4th Knight of the Immortal King and was known as a great warrior of the dwarves in his previous life. This guy is not used to stopping in front of obstacles. At such moments, on the contrary, he accelerates. He is followed by skeletons who must prove themselves worthy before the immortal leader. Thomas is pleased that he gave the dead a chance to take revenge for everything that happened to them in the past. All this is just the beginning. The terrorists will not get the opportunity to rest in the world of the dead. They will be forced to serve the new king. Thomas didn't even really interfere in the process, although they tried in every way to get him angry. He saw that the main boss of the terrorists had taken a guy he knew hostage. The name of this man is Roman, who trades in illegal weapons. He is very afraid of death, and Thomas understands that he needs to intervene to stop illegal justice. The arms dealer was rescued and promised to repay the soldier for his help. The Necromancer ordered him to shut up immediately and shove his dirty money somewhere far away. Roman was sure that in front of him was an American soldier who should not be aggressive towards the hostages. Thomas immediately pretended to apologize in order to relax the guy a little. As soon as the arms dealer lost his vigilance, he immediately decided to do something out of his head. He did terrible things, and ordinary citizens suffered because of his activities. Thomas is not an American soldier, so he can carry out justice the way he wants. It turned out that this moment was filmed on a hidden video camera. Thomas noticed the guy and ordered him to come out into the light immediately if he wanted to stay alive. The war correspondent realized he had no choice but to approach Thomas and give his name. From this point on, Jeffrey must follow the Necromancer and constantly shoot him. People must see how terror ends and what will happen to the rebels who consider themselves the masters of the world. The American delegation's command post had already learned what had happened. The captain couldn't believe that the rebels had so many tanks and that they were all moving towards their base. The report was sent by the hostage rescue team, but it left far more questions than answers. It turned out that the hostages were saved and the terrorists were destroyed and no longer a threat. Roman's body was also discovered and had to be rescued and taken to an American prison. The commander could not believe for a long time that they did not suffer a single loss in such a difficult mission. There was no resistance, and now a strange video is spreading on the internet. This video features Thomas, who the cameraman calls the Messiah who has arrived on a war-torn land. The Awakened One from Korea declared war on the terrorists and began a full-scale massacre. The video was posted by a war reporter named Jeffrey, and now it all fits together. All these enemy forces are moving as if towards the final battle to stop the Awakened Korean. All that remains is to pray that the immortal calms down and does not create hell on Earth. St. Marty hopes that Thomas will direct his anger not at the terrorists, but at destroying Trenet's influence. The terrorists are truly shocked. They still don't understand what kind of skeletons attacked their base. Now they are trying to unite all their forces to prepare for the final battle. Recently, all major bases have been destroyed, even including troops in rebel-controlled cities. Firearms were absolutely useless. The skeletons did not pay attention to bullets and constantly moved forward, thirsty to taste the blood of the enemy. Terrorists can no longer sit idly by and must pull out their main trump card in this war. Thomas continued to communicate with the rebels through a war reporter. The Necromancer and his army of 10,000 stand on the threshold of the final battle. Perhaps someone doubts necromancy, but in any case, in the abyss of despair in the desert, one can finally notice a ray of hope. Thomas ordered his army to prepare because the time for the final battle was coming. The Shadow Soldiers are happy that the day has come when they can fight shoulder to shoulder with the king. Now they finally have complete freedom to administer justice. You just need to follow your king and destroy the evil forces that create chaos. The bloody massacre will go down in history in this desert, and everything around will be painted scarlet. The rebels hope that high-level technology will be able to help them. Let's see how this technique will cope with the power that the King of the Gnomes is ready to activate. If they think that a regular tank can stop this guy, then they are extremely naive.